Hundreds of millions of rocks orbit the Sun within the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, but only some of them come relatively close to Earth. NASA classifies asteroids orbiting within 30 million miles of our planet as near-Earth objects, and inside this group, there are particularly worrisome objects. Those are so large and orbit so closely to our home planet that they could turn into a real threat to the world should a direct collision occur. At the moment, NASA is keeping a close eye on an asteroid named Bennu. It's a fairly large space object that might smash into our planet in 159 years. According to the experts, the asteroid, which was first spotted in 1999, is quite likely to drift into the orbit of our planet. If it happens, it might collide with Earth by the 24th of September, 2182. Asteroid Bennu is thought to be taller than the Empire State Building. If that hits our planet, the collision will release 1,200 megatons of energy. That's an enormous amount of energy that nothing built on Earth could produce. Scientists from NASA believe that during the flyby in the 22nd century, there's a tiny chance that the asteroid will pass through a gravitational keyhole. That's a region of space that might set the space traveler on a certain path, which could result in the asteroid crashing into Earth. Bennu flies by our planet every 6 years. It has had 3 close encounters with Earth in 1999, 2005, and 2011. These days, scientists estimate the chance of the asteroid hitting our planet by 2182 as 1 in 2,700. That's more than 5 times a person's chance of being struck by lightning. But even though Bennu's chance of colliding with Earth are quite low at the moment, the space rock has still been categorized as a, quote, potentially hazardous asteroid, all because it might come as close as 4.65 million miles from Earth. That's the reason why it's also classified as a near-Earth object. Bennu is a carbon-rich asteroid that was formed in the first 10 million years of the history of the solar system. That's around 4.5 billion years ago. No wonder this space body holds precious clues to the origin and development of the rocky planets of our solar system, which are, as you recall, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Even better, it may contain organic molecules, similar to those that are crucial for life to evolve. In 2020, NASA's Osiris-Rex managed to briefly touch the surface of the asteroid. It collected some samples and propelled off the space rock afterward. For NASA, it was the first mission of this kind. But it won't probably come as a surprise that Bennu isn't the only asteroid we should worry about. Asteroid 99942, Apophis, is another space body we'd better watch out for. It's a near-Earth object about 1,100 feet across. It was discovered in 2004, and at first, it was identified as one of the most dangerous asteroids ever detected. Apophis gained notoriety very fast. It was believed to pose a serious threat to Earth. Experts predicted that it would come uncomfortably close to our planet in 2029. Luckily, after a more careful examination of Apophis and its orbit, astronomers concluded that there was no risk of the asteroid colliding with our planet for at least a century. The risk of an impact in 2029 was ruled out completely, as well as the potential impact that could be caused by the asteroid's close approach in 2036. Interestingly, until March 2021, there was a small chance of a collision in 2068. But then, Apophis made a flyby of Earth, and astronomers took this chance to use powerful radars to estimate the asteroid's orbit around the Sun more precisely. This allowed them to rule out any impact risk for at least the next 100 years. Now, the reason why such discoveries make us so worried is that even a relatively small asteroid, the size of a house, can wreak havoc upon colliding with our planet. And if an asteroid is larger than 0.6 miles across, astronomers call it a planet destroyer. The impact energy released by such an asteroid after striking Earth could be devastating. That's why knowing where such asteroids are and in what direction they're moving is crucial. The problem is that our capability to protect the planet from asteroid impacts is not top-notch yet. If such a catastrophe was about to occur, we would need some time to prepare, because an asteroid collision is no joke. Probably the most well-known asteroid impact site is the Chicxulub crater. It's the evidence of the terrifying collision that led to the extinction of dinosaurs. Strangely, this crater isn't very visible, but some others are. For example, Barringer Crater in Arizona, which is also called Meteor Crater. It looks rather blood-chilling when you think about the collision that led to its appearance. In any case, we now know that space rocks hit not only the Earth but also the Moon, Mercury, and Mars. No rocky planet in the solar system is safe from asteroid impacts. That's why we have an entire scientific enterprise whose goal is to find and catalog the asteroid population of the solar system. Now, it might sound a bit scary, but there are around 25,000 asteroids larger than 460 feet in diameter near the orbit of our planet. Such a space rock is large enough to wipe an entire city off the face of the Earth. So far, less than 50% of such asteroids have been detected and tracked. There are also an estimated 230,000 objects equal to or larger than 160 feet in size. Those are capable of destroying a concentrated urban area, and still fewer than 8% of those have been detected. There are also tens of millions of smaller near-Earth objects. They are larger than 33 feet across and might cause some surface damage. Less than 1% of such small space bodies have been discovered so far. Now, the thing is, the inner solar system is extremely challenging for asteroid search. Each night, there are only 2 10-minute windows when astronomers can observe the region, all because the sun's glare creates a very bright background glow. Plus, the atmosphere of our planet also distorts and blurs observations. Spotting asteroids in such conditions is beyond the capabilities of most telescopes. A unique instrument is needed to fulfill this task, and the tool of choice is the Dark Energy Camera at Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory in Chile. This device wasn't designed to hunt asteroids. Researchers built it to search for another elusive target, dark energy, the mysterious force driving the expansion of the universe. The DEC is supposed to observe hundreds of millions of galaxies. That's why it's both wide and deep. This way, it can both peer deep into the universe and capture a wide field of view, which helps it record the motions of galaxies and the conditions in the early age of the universe. But it also means that the DEC is perfectly suited to spotting asteroids near the Sun. Inner asteroids are rare, and deep images are necessary because such asteroids are faint. Scientists need to be able to fight both the bright twilight sky near our star and the distorting effect of Earth's atmosphere, and the DEC can help them achieve their goal. The Dark Energy Camera was built to carry out the Dark Energy Survey, which finished in 2019. Now astronomers can direct the power of the camera towards other tasks. They claim that the DEC's survey is one of the most sensitive searches ever performed for objects near Venus's orbit and within the orbit of our planet. It provides us a great chance to find out what kinds of objects are lurking in the inner solar system.
More than 20 years ago, back in 1999, we discovered an interesting diamond-shaped space rock. It was an asteroid called Ryugu. Its name is the Japanese term for Dragon Palace. There's a Japanese folktale behind that name. Basically, it's about a magical palace hidden deep underwater. In this story, there's a fisherman who visits the castle traveling on the back of a turtle. He returns back to the surface with a mysterious box. About 2 years ago, a similar thing happened in reality when the Japanese spacecraft Hayabusa 2 visited Ryugu and came back with mysterious samples it picked up there. And the fairy tale doesn't just stop there. There are so many craters and rocks on Ryugu, so it probably had quite a rough past. And the craters all share a theme. They're named after something from the world of fairy tales. For example, the name of the princess who lived in this magical Ryugu castle, together with her dad, a dragon deity. Some got names after the fisherman who saved a turtle, and the turtle itself, of course. But back to the science now. So this spacecraft took a sample from the surface of Ryugu, got back to Earth, and teams of researchers discovered something really cool. the asteroid is even older than our solar system. The spacecraft took the sample to help researchers to understand the origins of our solar system better. But this is not the first time scientists came across such ancient grains. They previously found them in multiple meteorites. Meteorites are generally space rocks that survive the fall through the atmosphere to land on Earth. They're usually rich in carbon, just like the asteroid Ryugu. But the material on Ryugu is even more specific and something you can't stumble upon on our planet: silicon carbide, a combination of pure silicon and pure carbon. The material Ryugu is made of is so unusual, it even tells us the asteroid was formed in the outer solar system. It's one of the 3 asteroids that are orbiting the Sun, but are moving relatively close to Earth. Each of them is just a loose pile of rubble, and their collective gravity is something that holds them together. They probably formed after their parent bodies collided and shattered into smaller pieces. Ryugu's individual rocks are probably 4.6 billion years old, or even more. So, it's most likely made up of material from its parent body. But some theories claim its surface could be 158 million years old. Ryugu sneaked into the inner part of our solar system, so we got a better chance to study it a little bit. It's circling around the Sun somewhere between our home planet and Mars. It crosses Earth's orbit from time to time, which is why it ended up in a category of potentially dangerous things for us, even though it's peaceful at the moment, and it really doesn't harm us in any way. It's one of the darkest space bodies in our solar system, and it's surprisingly dry. Strange, its parent body probably consists of lots of water ice. Maybe Ryugu is dry because it has flown too close to the Sun sometime in the past. That heated up its surface and dried it out. Or some of its radioactive materials heated the asteroid and removed most of its water. How do we even know how old our solar system is? Once upon a time, which is billions of years ago, in some faraway, almost forgotten corner of the Milky Way, there was a molecular cloud. It fell apart and collapsed like many others across the universe did. That's how new stars form. This one formed new stars too, and one of them was a little bit isolated from the others. It collected material around it and turned it into something we call a protoplanetary disk. That's a disk of gas and dust that rotates and goes around the core of what will later become a solar system. That disk can develop into celestial bodies too, like asteroids and planets. But this disk formed the central star we know today as our Sun, 8 planets, and the rest of the objects that make our solar system. It's about 4.6 billion years old. All stars come from this pretty cool thing called a presolar nebula. It's, once again, a cloud of dust and gas that pulls material in. Later, a star forms out of it. A big outer region that surrounds a nebula is cold. A presolar nebula creates a protostar. It's a young star that is still not on its own but needs to gather mass from its parent cloud. Then the star becomes independent. The material from the outer cold region then starts forming bigger clumps. As time goes by, these large clumps grow and fall in. They move around, interact with each other, and sometimes even merge or eject one another. After hundreds of thousands to even millions of years, once there's a star, the planets start forming. There were probably many objects that are gone by now, but our solar system doesn't look very different from what it was back when it was formed. Some things may have been different though. We have 4 gas giants now: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Maybe there might have been a 5th one too. It's possible our 4 gas giants were closer to the Sun, but they migrated outwards. And what was between Venus and Mars? One theory says Theia, a smaller Mars-sized world that later, bam, collided with Earth, and we got the Moon. Checking the materials of these objects, scientists have found out many interesting things when they study all kinds of minerals, rocks, and solid bodies. The composition of different elements tells them about how old some object is. They have studied meteorites that have landed on our planet. They assumed these meteorites and the Earth are part of the same system, so they calculated their potential age and got around 4.54 billion years. Rocks from the Moon haven't gone through the same processes as Earth rocks, and they're younger by a couple of million years. And the Sun, the central star of our solar system, could be a bit older, maybe tens of millions of years older than the oldest rocks. That's how formation in most cases goes, remember? Stars first, then planets and other solid objects next. So yes, it could be close to 4.6 billion years old. Jupiter's satellite Callisto is, as far as we know, the oldest moon both in our solar system and the universe. It's not that glamorous, just a rocky world with ice covering its surface and many craters. These craters tell us that many random flying objects have been hitting it over the past 4 billion years. That's how long we believe it's been around. Callisto and the rest of the moons around Jupiter have probably been born out of debris that was left after Jupiter formed. This all seems so old, but the universe is 13.7 billion years old. So imagine how many things out there are even older than our solar system. But now, scientists have confirmed that they have found one of the oldest but also most distant objects we've ever known in the universe. It's a galaxy 12.8 billion light years away from us. It started forming within the first billion years of the universe, which also means it was that long after the Big Bang started everything. During the first 400 million years after the Big Bang, it was most likely way too hot for anything to form. So, first galaxies, black holes, and stars started forming maybe within the first 500 million to billion years. So this old galaxy could be one of the first things that ever appeared in the universe, and we get to see it. It's hard to observe it though. Scientists use a telescope to explore it, but the picture's still very blurry. It's hard to see such objects because of all those thick, gigantic clouds of dust that surround them. The Hubble Space Telescope is usually best to view distant galaxies. But there's another telescope with a better position to look at such objects, and we can't wait for it to be fully operational to see what else it'll discover.
In 2017, a strange object was spotted in our solar system. It had the shape of a long tube, similar to a pancake. No known asteroid or comet we've seen looks like that. Its exterior was also peculiar. It was at least 10 times more reflective than the average stuff that flies through space, with some saying it had a surface similar to polished metal. When it went past the Sun and left our reach, it accelerated faster than what our gravity could account for. At first glance, it was like this thing had a rocket strapped to its back. This unusual visitor even got a special name, Oumuamua. It comes from Hawaiian and translates to scout or visitor from a faraway land. And because of its characteristics, scientists soon began to wonder if this was at last a visit from otherworldly creatures. Before they went full-on with the science fiction suppositions, astronomers gathered the information they were sure about, starting with the fact that Oumuamua must have come from another solar system. There must have been some unfortunate event in its home system that led to its ejection. What they didn't know was that this was a comet or asteroid. They're both celestial objects orbiting a sun, but they have distinct compositions and behaviors. Comets are composed primarily of ice, dust, and rocky material, often referred to as dirty snowballs. When a comet approaches the sun, the heat causes the ice to vaporize, releasing gas and dust particles into space. This creates a bright glowing tail that can extend for millions of miles. Comets generally have elliptical orbits, often taking them from the distant reaches of our solar system closer to the Sun. Asteroids, however, are mostly made of rock and metal. In our neighborhood, they are remnants of the early formation of the solar system and are typically found in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Unlike comets, asteroids do not develop tails when they approach the Sun, as they have no ice. Their orbits generally follow more circular paths compared to comets. By all accounts, Oumuamua should be a comet, because it seems to come from a different location in the universe. Yet, it doesn't exhibit the typical signs of cometary activity. Oumuamua lacks a tail and does not spew out gas as it passes by, not like me. Even though it behaves like a comet, it looks more like an asteroid. Now, another big question is how scientists even managed to spot Oumuamua in the first place. Considering the vastness of space and time in the galaxy, it's remarkable. Stars have lifetimes spanning millions or billions of years, and the formation of a solar system takes hundreds of millions of years. Even the fastest objects take tens of thousands of years to travel from one star to another. In contrast, humans have only been observing the skies with telescopes for around 400 years, a tiny fraction of cosmic time. And it's only in recent decades, even years, that we've had the technology to detect and track fast-moving, dim objects. Either rocks like these are abundant, or we've been incredibly lucky with our detections, or it's simply wanted to be seen. Now, another question that was asked was where such objects could come from. It's highly unlikely that Oumuamua came from a mature, stable solar system. That's because such systems don't eject enough material to fill up the galaxy. Occasionally, a random rock might get flung out, but it can rarely travel so far. Young systems, however, act differently. In these chaotic environments, collisions, mergers, and migrations are happening everywhere. Plenty of tiny rocks roam around, perfect candidates for ejection. The solar system that kicked Oumuamua out must have had a planet similar to Jupiter. Its massive size and gravity could influence other objects in the system, causing potential ejections. But not all solar systems develop Jupiter-sized planets. Often massive planets end up close to their stars, becoming hotter versions of Jupiter. These planets, snugly orbiting a sun, are less likely to eject debris. Now, Neptune-like planets may play a role too. While not as massive as Jupiter, they tend to call the outer regions of solar systems their home. Our solar system has the Kuiper Belt, a reservoir of comets in its outer reaches. During a solar system's early stages, interactions between Neptune-like planets and debris are common. Finding Neptune-like planets in other systems has been challenging, though. Our methods for detecting exoplanets work better for massive objects close to their stars, making it difficult to spot Neptune counterparts farther out. Oumuamua was also linked to a peculiar theory about how life came to be in the universe – Panspermia. Now that's a hypothesis that suggests that life exists throughout the universe and can be distributed between planets by various means, such as asteroids, comets, or even spacecraft. It says that life must have originated in one location in the universe and then spread to other celestial bodies. Fans of the panspermia theory have suggested that such interstellar objects could potentially carry tiny microbes, those building blocks of life between star systems. If such objects were to impact a planet or a moon, they could transfer these materials and seed the celestial body with life. For now, there is no evidence to support the theory that this comet in particular has transported life between star systems. After years of research, the overall consensus became that Oumuamua was indeed a comet. The reason why it moves so strangely is because it might have frozen hydrogen on its surface that reacts when touched by sunlight. The closer it got to our sun, the faster it became, releasing that hydrogen and also changing its path to our solar system. Its color also supports this theory. It's red, which might mean it's been hit by cosmic rays for a long time. The longer it was touched by those rays, the more hydrogen it gathered in the process. But since they can't be completely sure, astronomers have a plan to follow this visitor. One idea is to send a mission to check it out. It's already far away from us, but it may not be too late just yet. We may be able to send a probe fast enough to catch up with the comet. The plan was named Project Lyra and aims to use the Earth's orbit and that of Jupiter to bounce out a probe far enough to reach Oumuamua. If it works, it will be the fastest space device we've sent out in the universe. One potential trajectory of the space probe involves the gravitational pull of our planet and that of Jupiter as a lasso effect, but not Ted Lasso. The probe will leave our planet and re-enter Earth's orbit before sending it to meet with Jupiter's pull. It will be sent back near our planet a second time, where it will be ejected with enough force to reach the comet. Project Lyra also aims to follow a second faraway visitor named Borisov. This one was discovered by an amateur astronomer and now bears his name. What's interesting about it is that it's, well, spotless. Similar to our experience with Oumuamua, we haven't seen anything like Borisov before either. Studies of the light coming from its cloud of dust and gas show it's very clean compared to other space objects. After it was first noticed in August 2019, astronomers studied its path through our solar system and concluded it came from another star too. But Borisov gave us more time to study it because we spotted it earlier in its journey through our neighborhood. Researchers used advanced telescopes to look at the dust coming off Borisov. They found it's throwing off over 400 pounds of dust every second. They also found Borisov has more carbon monoxide than comets from our solar system usually do. But the amount isn't the same everywhere on the comet. This tells us the space object probably started forming near its home star before moving away, maybe because of larger planets in its system. The light from Borisov is way more polarized than light from other comets we've seen, and its cloud is super smooth. This tells us Borisov has never interacted with another star.
Whoosh! Debris runs through outer space all the time, often heading towards our planet. We're mostly not aware of it. Most of that debris burns up when it enters our atmosphere anyway. We do get to enjoy the bright blaze in the clear night sky because, from time to time, we see it as fleeting meteor showers. But sometimes, a meteorite is tough enough to survive the atmosphere and large enough to leave a remarkable spot on our planet. We're talking about what often looks like nearly circular excavated holes. Nestled in the Colorado Plateau in northern Arizona, Barringer Crater is a rimmed pit in the shape of a bowl we also call Meteor Crater. It's relatively young since it formed only 50,000 years ago. There was this enormous iron meteor that hit at eye-watering speeds of up to 26,000 miles per hour. It exploded so hard that the meteorite excavated an amazing 175 million tons of rock. Daniel M. Barringer first identified this crater. He strongly believed the pit was a result of a meteor hitting our planet, but not many scientists believed him. Barringer spent a couple of years investigating this crater to prove his theory. Not just that, he also hoped to find some of the valuable metal content. But a major part of this once pretty large meteorite would have been destroyed during the collision. Kali Crater. At first, it seems like you're looking at a nice swimming pool. But 7,500 years ago, another meteorite headed towards the Earth. While passing by through our planet's atmosphere, it fell apart and hit our planet in fragments. That's how Kali Meteorite Crater Field formed. A group of 9 meteorite craters in the Estonian village of Kali. That's located on one of the country's islands. The largest crater ended up being 360 feet wide and 72 feet deep. The rest of the 8 smaller holes are located right around the main one. It's a tourist attraction today, but imagine how panicked our prehistoric ancestors that lived there must have felt while watching these gigantic rocks fall from the sky. Also, there's a chance the surface of this island was covered in forest, but it all probably burned down during the impact. South Africa has its own gem too, Fort Crater, the largest and the oldest one in the world. More than 2 billion years ago, a meteorite with a diameter of 6 miles struck our planet close to today's Johannesburg, South Africa. This impact was nearly twice as powerful as the one that made the dinosaurs go extinct. Almost right after the meteorite hit the ground, the crater formed. The hole shallowed and widened as the rock below began to rebound, plus its walls collapsed. The meteorite that hit this spot was probably 6 to 9 miles in diameter. If a celestial object that hit the Earth is bigger than 0.6 miles, it could have effects on the global level. So this one probably caused fires across the world. Also, enormous amounts of dust probably ended up in the atmosphere. which changed the climate for months, maybe even years. Lunar crater is an astonishing spot in southern India, discovered almost 200 years ago. The pit lies within a large plain of basaltic rock left over from violent volcanic eruptions in this area, which happened 65 million years ago. Scientists even thought it was a volcanic crater at first, but soon they realized it was the result of a strong meteor impact up to 50,000 years ago. Look how specific basaltic rock is. And Lunar crater is the only one formed in such a type of rock. There are trees all across the lower crater hills. And you can find a couple of interesting species over there, such as chinkra, peafowl, and gazelles. Plus, you can see many migratory birds flocking to the lake in the cold winter months. Yup, there's a lake there, and it's both alkaline and saline. In 2020, it surprised the local people because it changed its color to a rosy pink. It seemed unusual at first, but then scientists discovered such a specific color was the result of a growing population of a specific type of salt-loving microscopic organisms that produce such a pink pigment. This place is important for Indian mythology too, which is why there are multiple temples around the edge of the crater. Here's something really remarkable. The Ryugu crater contains an entire town within its inner ring. It's a small town in Germany. You can see the full result of this impact only from the air. The town walls highlight the inner ring of this crater that's about 0.6 miles, 1 kilometer, in diameter. Those are probably the dimensions of the meteorite that formed the crater. You can't distinguish the rest of it so easily, since the crater has been eroded away. That means natural forces such as rain and winds have changed it. In the heart of the Oumuamua Plateau lies the amazing Pingualuit crater. The crater has its own pristine rainwater, some of the purest water you could find. It's not in any way linked to other lakes in that area, nor does it receive water from them. The water there accumulates from snow and rain. It's only lost when it evaporates. The depth of almost 900 feet is like a window to the crater's rich geological past. Scientists found different elements such as cobalt, nickel, and iron that helped them determine it was a specific type of meteorite where its parent body hadn't modified it in any way. The parent body is the celestial body from which a single meteorite or an entire class of them originate. Pingualuit crater formed over 1 million years ago. There are even traces of stone set in a circular arrangement and rock shelters. People that used to live in this area would set up camps on the ridges of the crater. It was a good position for them to catch animals and stay safe at the same time. Australia is home to some of the world's most fascinating impact craters. In its western part, you can find the massive Wolf Creek crater. It's the world's second largest crater that lies on the edge of the Great Sandy Desert. More than 100,000 years ago, one meteor was most likely traveling at crazy speeds of 10 miles per second before finally slamming into the desert. Scientists discovered it in the middle of the 20th century, but local people had known about it long before that. They had many cultural stories about that crater. One was about two ancestral snakes who were so incredibly big they managed to form both Wolf and the nearby Sturt Creeks as they were making their way across the desert. One of those giants emerged from the ground, and that's where the big crater is today. It's dangerous to climb there since rocks are pretty loose, but that's where you can see some interesting animals like brown ring-tailed dragon lizards catching insects for lunch, or Major Mitchell's cockatoo harvesting seeds from the plants that grow on the crater floor. Another must-see crater in Australia is Goss's Bluff. It lies in the heart of the continent, sandwiched between the James Range and the McDonnell Range. It's a place of great cultural importance, so if you're visiting, respect signs stating which areas you're not allowed to access. A giant meteor slammed into our planet more than 140 million years ago. It was a really long time ago, so the original crater has been eroded through time. But even today, you can still see its core. A central ring of hills nearly 3 miles in diameter. This looks like you're on Mars, doesn't it? It's actually southwestern Algeria, and its famous Amguid crater. This one is relatively young, considering it's a result of a meteor impact that happened 100,000 years ago. This crater has an almost perfectly circular shape. Its center is unusually flat because of the type of soil at the bottom and the fact it's tightly compacted.
We're flying past the planets of our solar system. We pass by Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Then we move through dark space beyond the edge of our world. We've reached our destination. It's the Oort cloud. It's a hypothetical region around the solar system that holds tons of asteroids and blocks of ice. It's likely to be where the largest comet in human history was born. And now, it's heading toward the Sun. Bernardinelli-Bernstein was discovered totally by accident during the Dark Energy Survey. Our telescopes were pointed at distant space. Their main goal was to learn more about how the universe was expanding. Astronomers also wanted to make a more detailed map of the observable universe. Scientists analyzed over 80,000 images and found a moving object. It was alarmingly close to our home planet. Its size was an impressive 62 miles. That's about the width of Lake Michigan. It was an already active comet with a long tail. Usually, comets get a tail when they come close to the Sun. The heat from the star warms the comet's surface, and light materials, like ice, begin to evaporate. This forms a cloud of steam and dust that stretches far beyond the comet. But Bernardinelli-Bernstein is too far away from the Sun to start heating up. This means that its surface has a different composition. It might be solid carbon monoxide. This increases the luminosity of the comet. That's why it can be observed with telescopes on Earth. We can compare Bernardinelli-Bernstein to the largest meteorite to ever fall on Earth. About 66 million years ago, our planet was hit by a meteorite about 6 miles wide. At that time, the blast wave from the collision went around Earth several times. Tsunami waves caused by the impact were taller than the largest skyscrapers, and the energy from the explosion set huge areas on fire. Almost all living creatures, including dinosaurs and ancient fish, ceased to exist. The meteorite left a crater 3 times the size of Manhattan. The place where it fell was rich in sulfur. This substance evaporated because of the abnormal heat and gathered into massive clouds. This caused acid rains that were falling on Earth for several more weeks. Our newly discovered comet is 10 times bigger. If it were flying toward Earth, you'd see it with the unaided eye long before the impact. It looked like a moving star in the night sky. A few days before the comet reached our planet, you'd see it even during the day. You'd be able to distinguish its long tail, too. When the comet entered the atmosphere, it produced a booming sound so loud you'd hear it on the other side of Earth. At this point, the comet would begin to heat up because of friction with the air. It'd start burning. Countless pieces of debris would break away from the main body of the meteorite and fall to Earth. As soon as Bernardinelli-Bernstein touched the surface of the planet, we'd see a flash so bright it'd outshine the sun. In a fraction of a second, a colossal amount of energy would be converted into heat. This would create the most powerful explosion in the history of our planet. It'd literally rip out chunks of ground and throw them into the air. The blast wave would incinerate everything within a few hundred miles. It continued to spread in different directions, breaking and bending trees. At one point, it reached snow-capped mountains and triggered huge avalanches that would cover many villages. The blast wave would go around the planet, shattering glass and buildings on all continents. Tsunami waves would be so high they would cover entire coastal cities. The most powerful earthquake in history would break the ground and create deep cracks. After the impact, billions of tons of dust and ash would rise into the air. A giant black cloud would completely block the sun's rays. Earth would be plunged into darkness. All the debris in the air would start melting. They'd turn into liquid lava and fall back to the surface, causing even more damage. The ash and dust in the air would cover the sun for several more months. During this time, the temperature on Earth would drop by several degrees. Even if they were hiding in deep shelters and bunkers, people, as well as all other living organisms on the planet, would be unlikely to survive this event. Fortunately, Bernardinelli-Bernstein isn't going to approach Earth. Right now, the comet is about 20 astronomical units away from the Sun. That's 20 times the distance from Earth to the Sun. It means the comet will soon cross the orbit of Uranus. In 2031, it'll be 11 astronomical units away from our star. That's just outside Saturn's orbit. This is going to be the closest Bernardinelli-Bernstein will approach the Sun. Then it will begin its flight back to the edge of the solar system. But the comet is bound to return again. It'll move away from the Sun and slow down until the star's gravity pulls it back. Then the comet will make another circle around our solar system, but that will take about 3 million years. Right now, we have other meteorites to worry about. For example, 3200 Phaethon. It crosses the orbits of Mars, Earth, Venus, and Mercury. Then it goes around the Sun and comes back. This cycle takes about 523 days. Then it starts over again. This meteorite is considered potentially hazardous because it crosses Earth's orbit at 7.5 Earth-Moon distances. During one of its last approaches to Earth, this 3.6-mile wide block of rock showered our planet with small meteors. Since the asteroid often passes by the Sun, its surface is most likely to look like the dry bottom of a mud swamp. It's covered in scales and cracks. As it flies past Earth, these scales break off and cause meteor showers. But the largest, potentially hazardous asteroid is the 1999 JM8. It's about the size of 77 soccer fields. It passes by Earth at 9 lunar distances. Its closest approach to our planet will happen in August 2137. If such a meteorite were to hit Earth, an entire continent could be wiped out. The rest of the world would experience massive tsunamis, but would survive the event. So naturally, scientists are thinking of ways to protect the planet from such a disaster. The first solution is a controlled Big Bang. One of the laws of physics says that if you apply some force in one direction, it'll cause a reaction in the opposite direction. So if we spot an asteroid that is about to collide with Earth, we'll need to send a rocket toward it. This way, we'll produce a controlled explosion, not inside, but right above its surface. The blast will be directed upward, and the asteroid will shift downward. Even this tiny shift would be enough to change the trajectory of the asteroid, and then it'll fly past Earth. Another way is to send a heavy object, like a spaceship, toward the space body. Every heavy object has its own gravity, so the spacecraft will have to fly close to the asteroid, which will attract the ship to its surface, but the engines of the spacecraft will resist. The ship will start pulling the asteroid in the opposite direction. This will change the trajectory of the asteroid, and our planet will remain intact. We can also ram the asteroid with the spaceship. Bang! Or we could build a space station, like the ISS. It would be equipped with a bunch of huge magnifying lenses. We would send the station closer to the Sun and start looking for potentially hazardous asteroids. Then, we'd point all the lenses so that the Sun's rays would focus on the giant rock. The heat would begin to vaporize the matter from the asteroid's surface. That's where physics would come into play again. The matter would evaporate upward, and the asteroid would move downward. We could also wrap the asteroid in a reflective film, something like foil. Usually, space bodies absorb most of the Sun's rays, but if the asteroid was covered in foil, the rays would bounce off its surface. This would create a weak pushing force. That should be enough to avoid the collision. Of course, we could attach rocket engines to the asteroid. This way, we would be able to not only change its trajectory, but also control it. But that would depend on the size of the asteroid and the number of engines. And then, we could use this massive rock to ram it into other, larger asteroids.
Ah yes, February 14th, 2000. Just a regular Valentine's Day, some flowers and some candy, the beginning of the new millennium, and a good day to make history. Near Shoemaker, which stands for Near Earth Asteroid Rendezvous spacecraft, launched in 1996, finally got a date with asteroid 433 Eros. It wasn't about swiping right, but going around Eros and completing the first soft landing on an asteroid ever. Near almost didn't make it there. because an engine misfire from 1998 brought it into the wrong trajectory and it missed the target. Yet, engineers decided to let NEAR do the circle around the Sun for one more year, and it eventually made it. NEAR Shoemaker was created to find, target, and stalk some smaller space objects for around a year and collect important data about them. This spacecraft got more than 160,000 pictures of the asteroid surface, which helped with research in the years to come. Before then, some scientists took asteroids for just some random flying piles. Asteroid 433 Eros is indeed the smallest body in our solar system that got its own spacecraft orbiting it. At first sight, this asteroid seems like any other ordinary rock coming from space. Potato-shaped, rotating every 5.5 hours, the size of 2 Manhattans. For comparison, the biggest asteroid discovered is 383 miles across, while the smallest one is around 6 feet wide. Asteroids are actually some kind of leftovers that remain from the early stages of the solar system. The Sun, as we know it, began to get its shape when compressed gases and atoms started blending into a protostar. Smaller grains of debris and dust around the Sun formed into rocks, and as they were crashing into each other, ta-da! They formed even bigger ones. Objects that survive this chaotic and messy party are something we know today as planets and moons. Smaller bodies that couldn't get the status of a planet are called asteroids. They're too small to have any atmosphere, and their gravity isn't strong enough to shape them into a sphere, so they don't have conditions to support life. Most of them end up somewhere in between the orbits of Jupiter and Mars, and simply pass us by at a safe distance, but not Eros. It became the first of near-Earth asteroids, or NEAs. Since 1975, the closest Eros got to Earth was in 2012, around 16.5 million miles away, which makes it about 70 times the average distance to the Moon. It was discovered in 1898 and named after the Greek deity of love. You know, Eros, the arrows that he uses to make people fall in love with each other, the mess he makes with broken hearts. Yup, in Greek mythology, they call him Cupid. Among many other fascinating space discoveries is nuclear pasta. Not like one my grandma makes, true, but not that bad either. The recipe says you should 1. Wait for a star to reach a certain age when it's time for it to explode. And be patient because this could take maybe around 1 billion years. 2. After the explosion, collect its leftover neutrons and stir them until you get an extremely dense stew. Toss in some gravity to taste, and the last step, don't forget to bake it at 1 million degrees Fahrenheit. Nuclear pasta is definitely one of the weirdest meals on the universe menu, but also potentially the strongest material out there. You would need 10 billion times bigger force to shatter a place of nuclear pasta than to break steel. Scientists believe this stuff is that strong because it's incredibly dense, kinda like me. Picture this, 1.3 million Earths squeezed down and scrunched into the size of Toronto. Oumuamua is the first visitor that came to our solar system, something that scientists have been waiting for decades. This mysterious object was discovered in October 2017 and is considered to be a piece of some bigger body formed outside the solar system and torn apart during its journey. Oumuamua, which means scout in Hawaiian, is an elongated body that resembles a big space cucumber, definitely something unseen before. It has non-gravitational acceleration, and no one actually knows how it moves since there are no visible tails or any outgassing signs. Tabby's star is sure among the most mysterious in the universe. It's 1,000 light-years away, 50% larger, and a lot hotter than the Sun. In 2015, scientists noted that Tabby's star's brightness would dim down by as much as 22%. Big clouds of dust could be guilty of that, but this star is too old to have something like that. It's still not clear what could be causing this massive dimming. Nebula are huge clouds of dust, gas, and plasma that never stop dishing out surprises. They can change and take almost any shape: a fried egg, a space head, a diamond ring. A red square nebula is one of the most fascinating space objects. There is no explanation of how and where it came from. It's just a glowing and almost perfectly symmetric box in the middle of nowhere. Around 210 light-years away from Earth, there's the constellation called Lyra. That's where the Kepler-37 system is. Kepler-37b is the smallest planet in it, with under 1/3 of the Earth's mass. It's just a little bit bigger than the Moon. Scientists believe this is an airless and rocky planet similar to Mercury. Moving to Sagittarius B2, one of the biggest molecular clouds of dust and gas in our galaxy. It's located around 25,000 light-years from Earth and close to the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Research has shown it contains more than 50 different molecules, and one is sugary stuff that tastes similar to raspberries. Discovering tasty planets. Space is getting better and better. Fermi bubbles are two mysterious gigantic blobs made of cosmic rays, gas, and dust found in 2010. They hang around the central black hole of our galaxy, one on either side. Bubbles expanded below and above our galaxy over time, so they're now around 50,000 light-years across. No one knows how they got there, but one theory says they're related to the same black holes that occurred about 6 million years ago. Gliese 436b is one of the strangest planets out there. It's extremely hot, yet made of ice. This is a Neptune-sized planet that needs just a little bit more than 2 days to finish a full orbit around its parent star. It's assumed its surface has a temperature that goes up to 830 degrees, but the ice still doesn't melt since the planet has enormous gravity. Black holes are not always supermassive. IGR rests in the constellation Scorpius and is only 3 to 10 times more massive than the Sun, which probably makes it the smallest black hole discovered so far. NGC 3842, on the other hand, is something we picture when someone mentions a black hole. It's in a different galaxy and about 2,500 times as strong and massive as the black hole in the center of the Milky Way. Venus, the planet of superlatives. The closest planet to Earth, the hottest surface, reflective clouds that make it the shiniest planet as seen from Earth, the biggest number, 1,600, of volcanoes when compared to other planets of our solar system. Also, we're talking about the slowest spinning body in our universe that barely rotates at all. It takes 243 Earth days for Venus to make one single turn. This planet is so slow, you could actually walk faster before it makes a complete turn. Venus goes in the opposite direction from Earth, which is why sunsets there are in the east, while the sun rises on the west side. 55 Cancri E is about twice the Earth's size, with the temperatures of up to 4,900 degrees. Perfect conditions to turn carbon into diamonds. Yup. 1/3 of this planet is covered in carbon, which makes this diamond object one of the most expensive planets. Scientists who observe space changes in Antarctica see neutrinos at least once a month. Still, this one that struck our planet in 2017 was really special. It was the first one they could trace the origins of. They discovered it took 4 billion years for the neutrino to reach the Earth. It got to our planet from a massive black hole at the center of a galaxy that had been destroying all the matter surrounding it. Hey, welcome to the new neighborhood.
The sun is rising, lighting up the trees, swamps, and massive plants of the Yucatan Peninsula. It's 66 million years before today, the last days of the Mesozoic era. This peaceful world doesn't yet know that a rock the size of a mountain is nearing Earth at a speed of more than 40,000 miles per hour. It looks like a fireball that's growing larger and larger with every passing minute. Soon, it already seems to be bigger than the sun. Dinos, roaming the prehistoric Earth, don't know that they have to run, hide, save themselves. Not that it's going to help. The asteroid slams into the planet with enormous force. It doesn't stop moving until it gets through the crust to a depth of several miles. The impact leaves a crater that's more than 100 miles across. Thousands of cubic miles of solid rock instantly turn into vapor. The crash sets off a series of natural disasters that erase 80% of life on Earth. It's the very asteroid that's going to finish off the dinosaurs. All the creatures close enough to see the crash don't survive for longer than a few seconds, so powerful the hit is. Closer to the impact crater, the ground is covered with thousands of feet of hot ash, grit, and rubble. 9 seconds later, and everything for many miles around, grass, trees, shrubbery, bursts into flames. What isn't burned down within the next several minutes after the collision gets flooded. In some places, tsunami waves reach a height of 1,000 feet. Earthquakes are starting to shake Earth like never before. Their power is equivalent to all the earthquakes that have happened on the planet in the past 2 centuries, if they were going off simultaneously. A bit less than an hour after the collision, a gust of wind whips through the area at a speed of 600 miles per hour. It flattens down everything that has been left standing and scatters debris for miles around. A bit farther from the direct impact zone, the skies start to darken dramatically. What looks like shooting stars is actually debris raining back on the planet. Glowing ominous red, they re-enter Earth's atmosphere and emit infrared radiation. During the first hours after the crash, the sky is almost totally dark. Later, it starts to get lighter, very, very slowly. For the next couple of years, it's something between a cloudy day and twilight. Lots of plants don't survive this dimness and the absence of sunlight. The ash stays in the air for months. That's why when it rains, the water is highly acidic. Fires keep raging. They produce tons of toxins that destroy the ozone layer, at least for some time. Earth is in for hard times. More than 30,000 objects that are circling Earth these days can potentially strike our planet. NASA considers around 1,500 of them potentially hazardous. These space rocks are the remains left after the solar system was formed some 4.6 billion years ago. If one of these objects hits our planet, the consequences will be unpredictable. They can vary from shattered glass and broken windows to all life forms getting wiped off the face of the Earth. Unfortunately, in our case, it's likely to be the second option. In 2004, astronomers discovered a huge asteroid nearing Earth. The first observations showed that the chance of the space rock hitting our planet was a bit less than 3%. The asteroid was named Apophis. It's more than 1,100 feet across and weighs about 20 million tons. It's supposed to streak across the sky exactly on Friday, April 13th, 2029. Apophis will pass at a distance of 19,000 miles away from Earth's surface. Scientists are almost positive that the intruder won't collide with our planet. What's more, they're super excited about the possibility to see this space object close up. And not only them, up to 2 billion people will be able to watch the asteroid pass with the naked eye. But even though this space rock might miss our planet in 2029, it doesn't mean it won't return 7 years later, in 2036. That's when life as we know it might no longer exist. Earth's gravitational pull is likely to bring the asteroid closer, and when it comes back almost a decade later, it's going to be on a closer collision course. Then, what would happen if Apophis or any other asteroid its size crashed into our planet? It would hurtle down to Earth at a speed of more than 1,000 miles per hour. Because of its huge size, air friction wouldn't be able to slow down the invader. Earth's crust would finally stop the asteroid. The impact would turn into vapor not only the space rock itself, but also a huge chunk of the planet's crust. The collision would flatten even reinforced concrete buildings many miles away from the crater. If the asteroid landed in the ocean, the tidal waves would reach several hundred feet. They would cleanly scrub nearby coastlines. Some debris would travel so fast they'd leave the atmosphere and start to orbit Earth. But most of the rubble would rain back to the planet. This would be heating the atmosphere until it got as hot as an oven. Wildfires would be spreading all over the world. Anything not sheltered underground would be cooked in no time. And then, for a year or even longer, Earth would look the same as it did after the asteroid hit it more than 60 million years ago. Ash, soot, no sunlight. A gloomy place. By the way, in 2015, astronomers noticed a 1,300-foot wide asteroid a mere 3 weeks before it passed alarmingly close to our planet. If its course had been a tiny bit different, people wouldn't have had any time to prevent the collision and save themselves. Does that mean that if a similar giant headed toward Earth, we would be doomed? No worries, people would still have a chance to survive. For one thing, we could use a spacecraft to knock this visitor from outer space off its course. Or it could somehow be blasted into pieces. Scientists could also slow the thing down with the help of concentrated sunlight. Or people could probably tug it away with a gravity tractor. That's a theoretical spacecraft that can influence objects in space without touching them. In sci-fi movies, a huge asteroid often sneaks up on Earth and turns out to be a nasty surprise to astronomers. It hurtles toward our planet at breakneck speed and gets discovered just weeks or even days before the collision. In reality, scientists are constantly watching all more or less large objects in Earth's neighborhood. It means there would be plenty of time to do something before the inevitable happened. There are 3 kinds of missions scientists could prepare at short notice. Type 0. When a heavy spacecraft hurtles toward the intruder with one single goal, to knock it off its course. In this case, astronomers would have to rely on the already available information. The Type 1 mission would involve a scout. It would be launched first to get more close-up information about the space rock. Only after that, the main spacecraft would be launched. With more precise information, its journey would be way more productive. And if scientists chose the Type 2 mission, they would send a scout and a small spacecraft at the same time. The spacecraft would knock the asteroid a bit off its course. Then, the scout would collect all the necessary information. Based on this data, the spacecraft would finish its job with a more fine-tuned second push. If none of these methods worked, people could try going deep underground or even build a shelter on the ocean floor. But in this case, we'd need to find sources of energy that could help us survive for at least several decades. Plus, people would have to create a life support system that would somehow keep air and water fresh. Another option, which doesn't look realistic at the moment, is to go to space. It can't be low Earth orbit, about 1,200 miles above the planet's surface. Debris that would fly up at the impact could easily reach this height. This would probably leave people with 2 options: the Moon or Mars. Sadly, at the moment, we have no idea how to build a self-sustaining space colony, and there's not so much time left to figure it out.
No one will hear your cry in space, or something like that. We've all heard this famous chilling phrase, and it's actually true. Space, for the most part, consists of a giant nothingness. There's a lot of, space in space. But this doesn't mean there are no sounds in space. In fact, there are plenty of them, and some of them can even make you shiver. Let's take a look at the scariest space sounds. First of all, how are cosmic sounds even recorded? Sound is just the vibration of molecules. When you scream, you make the molecules push each other furiously until they reach the ear of the person you're yelling at. Then these vibrations get transmitted to the brain, and we recognize them as something that you might need to apologize for. In other words, to hear something, we need molecules. And that's where things get complicated. There aren't any of them in space. The entire universe almost completely consists of a vacuum. No, not a Hoover. Absolute nothingness. However, the wizards from NASA still record space sound somehow. So how do they do it? The thing is, there are some types of waves that don't care about molecules. We regular folk can't perceive them without some special devices. These waves include, for example, radio waves. We'll need a radio or something like that to recognize them. And that's exactly what NASA's satellites do. They catch random radio waves. Thanks to their heroism, we can find out how different cosmic bodies sound. These satellites record a variety of waves, fluctuations of plasmas, magnetic fields, and other, stuff. And then scientists from NASA transform all this into normal soundtracks. And some of them sound quite frightening, to put it mildly. Let's take our magnetic field, for example. It surrounds our planet like an invisible shield, protecting us from all sorts of nasties, like radiation and solar winds. At the same time, we can neither see it, feel it, nor hear. Oops. Well, the last one is outdated. Scientists from the Technical University of Denmark took magnetic waves recorded by the ESA swarm satellite. They converted them into an audio track and got a pretty creepy result. Now, to be honest, it sounds more like an eerie entity stalking you in the middle of the night. And if you remember the maps of Earth's magnetic field, it starts to feel like a spider crawling nearby. Ew. And this isn't the first strange sound that we caught on Earth. Recently, we caught another weird radio emission from space. Scientists found out that the repeating signal came from somewhere very far away, like billions of light years away from us. Such fast radio bursts usually lasted no longer than a few milliseconds, but this one was unique. It lasted about 3 seconds, basically thousands of times longer than usual. And at the same time, the signal was very precise, so much so that scientists even compared it to a heartbeat. Scientists believe that this signal is caused by pulsars, or neutron stars. One time, Nikola Tesla caught something similar, but unfortunately, at that time, we didn't know about such things as pulsars, so Tesla was sure that he had caught a message from some extraterrestrial life. It's a pity that the truth turned out to be much more boring. But let's move on from the Earth to the Moon. In 1969, the astronauts of the Apollo 10 mission, the spacecraft that made the final test flight to the Moon, flew past its surface. And then they caught some strange signals coming from the dark side of the Moon, the side that we never see because the Moon is tidally locked to us. The sound was so weird that the astronauts weren't even sure whether to report it to NASA. They were afraid they wouldn't be taken seriously, and maybe even not allowed to participate in the next space missions. Here's what it sounded like. But according to NASA, it's not some creepy extraterrestrial music at all. These may just be some radio waves that affected each other because of their proximity, although the astronauts who heard it for the first time probably felt a little creeped out. Let's move to the other planets. Now, 40 years ago, scientists actively explored the surface of Venus. They sent as many as 10 probes there, which were supposed to capture audio and video shooting from the surface. Now we know what Venus, which could easily destroy us at any attempt to even get close to it, sounds like. Horrifying. And you wouldn't expect anything else from the most dangerous planet in the solar system. Unfortunately, Venus is even more toxic than the average Twitter user. So these probes didn't last too long. They heroically arrived on a planet and soon broke down. Next one is Jupiter. This space giant, which is 11 times larger than the Earth, never fails to scare us. One of NASA's probes, Juno, flies around Jupiter every few weeks. The probe is moving at a tremendous speed, 130,000 miles per hour. One day, Juno caught one of the strongest invisible signals it had ever encountered. This was the point at which the mad solar wind came into conflict with the magnetic field of Jupiter. It kind of sounded like a cosmic boom. The original sound lasted 2 hours, but it was compressed to a few seconds. It actually sounds more like a collision of a sea wave and a rock. But here, in terms of horror, Jupiter surprisingly loses to one of its small moons, Ganymede. In 2021, the Galileo space probe flew past Ganymede, and during its flight, it received a rather strange recording. These sounds are satellite radiation, and it's unclear whether it sounds like a cozy sunny day in the jungle or like thousands of bats waiting for you in the night. Next one is Saturn. This signal was caught by the Cassini-Huygens Automatic Interplanetary Station, which was launched into space in 1997. When flying past Saturn, Cassini recorded a pretty scary sound. This terrifying cry of thousands of souls is actually just some radio waves. They aren't too different from what the auroras emit on Earth. A little later, Cassini received another recording, the sounds made by lightning and thunderstorms on Saturn. They sound pretty interesting too. More like popping corn or a Geiger counter, right? But that's just because these lightning strikes have a crazy frequency. Moving on from the solar system to outer space. The famous Voyager 1 was launched back in 1977 and continues to send us data even 40 years after its launch. In 2012, it left the solar system and entered interstellar space. And then, while abandoning its home, Voyager 1 detected the sound of plasma waves. The original recording lasted 7 months, but fortunately, scientists felt sorry for us and reduced it to 12 seconds. It isn't really eerie, but is still kind of unsettling. And although it feels like nothing can beat Saturn's horrors, let's end this tournament with one of the scariest objects in the universe, a black hole. This sound was recorded by the Chandra Space Telescope. While studying a cluster of galaxies in the constellation Perseus, they discovered something strange. Some undulating movements appear from the center of the cluster. They spread out in all directions, like circles on the water. Scientists have suggested that this was caused by a supermassive black hole. The thing is, black holes don't always devour space objects entirely. Sometimes they kind of spit them out. This causes vibrations of gases, which we can convert into sound tracks. What's interesting is that the oscillation of each such wave actually lasts about 10 million years. You're just listening to a very accelerated recording. Scientists have reduced the delay between oscillations by about 144 quadrillion times. So let's check it out. This is probably the eeriest sound from the whole list. Nothing too loud or wild, but there's something dark and disturbing about it. Now, those were the scariest space sounds captured by NASA. To be fair, most of them sounded creepy simply because they're radio waves, but it's still fun to get spooked sometimes. The ground shakes and you hear a loud cracking sound. Oh no, the dome is failing. Everyone runs to their escape pods to evacuate. People are pushing and shoving. The Earth-like atmosphere in the dome is going to be compromised, and you'll be exposed to the thin elements on the surface of Mars. Everyone rushes to put their helmets on. The crack is getting bigger by the second, and people are panicking, trying to get on the escape shuttles as quickly as possible. In the chaos, they all jam into the wrong ships, and there isn't any room for you. Red warning lights begin to flash in the dome, and a voice rings out, telling everyone to put their helmets on. The Martian atmosphere is only minutes away from rushing in, and humans won't be able to breathe otherwise. This is just your luck. You only just arrived on Mars. As the ships zoom off into the distance, you wonder what you should do. You call out for help, but no one answers. Suddenly, a robot guide rolls up behind you, and you hear a faint noise coming from its speakers. It says, "No one can hear you because the atmosphere on Mars is so much less dense than on Earth. It also has a lot of carbon dioxide, which absorbs sound waves. Even if a loud concert was happening just 30 feet away, it would sound like it was miles away. Would you like me to assist you with anything?" You ask it for help, and it shows you a 3D layout of the entire dome. You can see a few other shuttle stations, so you decide to aim for them. Unfortunately, you're going to need to get to the opposite side of the dome to reach another shuttle station. Just as you begin to panic and wonder how you could get there, the robot transforms into a bike and tells you to hop on. You get in and cruise through the city, looking at all the empty buildings and streets. The crack is getting even bigger, and tiny pieces of the dome begin to fall from above, like snow. When you arrive at the other station, the last few people are boarding the only shuttle. You chase after them, desperately trying to get their attention. As you ding the bell on your bike, though, it barely makes any noise at all. Their ship pulls away before they can notice you. You ask why sounds aren't working, and the robot explains that you can barely hear high-pitched noises on Mars. The carbon dioxide makes high-pitched noises, like bells and chirping birds, almost impossible to hear. If only you were still on Earth, they might have noticed you. The robot tells you that there's one last chance to escape. He transforms into a tiny spaceship. You get in, and he flies through the crack in the dome out into space. It's going so fast that you should be back on Earth before long. Just as you're starting to relax and enjoy the sights of space, you see a red light flashing on the robot. You ask it what's wrong, but you get no response. Suddenly, you realize that you can't hear anything in space. Sound travels in waves, and it needs something to move through, like air or water. Space is a vacuum with no air, so you can't hear any sounds at all. The spaceship suddenly changes direction and blasts off away from Earth. You try to steer the robot in the right direction, but you can't figure out how to get its attention. The ship charts a flight all the way to Venus. As you get closer, the turbulence kicks in. Venus has winds faster than any tornado on Earth. You keep getting swept away, trying to find a safe space to land in. The robot manages to keep a steady course, despite the wind throwing it all over the place. You can already feel the heat through all the layers. Finally, the robot spots a small cave in the distance and attempts to land there. As soon as the robot touches ground, it morphs into a spacesuit you can wear, so you're safe in the extreme environment. Today's forecast in Venus? Heat. Extremely boiling temperatures all day and night. Expect clouds of sulfuric acid and gale-force winds. The atmosphere is mainly made up of carbon dioxide, so you can expect your voice to drop deeper too because of the planet's dense atmosphere. It's only the second planet closest to the Sun, but it's actually the hottest. Its atmosphere traps the heat from the Sun and keeps it around the planet. It's actually so hot on Venus that it could melt lead. If you were cruising by with the spaceship, the whole thing would melt in a matter of minutes. Luckily, you have this indestructible robot armor. You try to ask the robot how to get back, and your voice sounds crazy. Your vocal cords vibrate slower here than on Earth, which makes the pitch lower. But at the same time, the speed of sound on Venus is a lot faster, making it more squeaky. Then, the high carbon dioxide content in the air creates a weird effect that tricks your brain into thinking that the sound source is small. Overall, you sound something like a cartoon duck. You look out across the horizon and see many hills and mountains scattered across the plain. But the robot tells you that many of these are volcanoes. Venus actually has more volcanoes than any other planet in the solar system. Scientists discover more than 1,600 only on the surface, which could mean there are even more than that still undiscovered. Yeah, maybe being here all day isn't such a good idea, and not just because of the heat. A single day on Venus lasts 243 Earth days. In fact, a day on Venus is longer than a year, because it only takes 225 days for it to complete a rotation around the Sun. It's hard to understand each other, but you eventually manage. The robot tells you that it just got lost, and that you'll be back on Earth in no time. While walking around the cave, you realize that you're actually inside a volcano. You tell the robot to hurry up and get you back home before it erupts. It's clearly not very good at navigating space, though, because it's not long before you end up somewhere else. You're now on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The moon is so large that it's even bigger than Mercury, the planet closest to the Sun. The spaceship arrives in the atmosphere, which feels and behaves similar to Earth's. The only noticeable difference is the orangey haze hanging in the air, which makes it a lot more difficult to see. As you descend towards the moon, the robot detects signs of cyanide gas all over the surface and fluffy clouds made out of iced methane. You land on a soft spot and set about trying to get the robot to take you back to the right place. At least this time you're not sweating. The robot transforms again and begins to scan the surroundings. The atmosphere is around 60% thicker than on Earth. Walking around feels like you're wading through maple syrup. There is a really high nitrogen content in the air, so things sound surprisingly similar to how they do on Earth. You tell the robot you really want to get home now, but it comes out as a loud, raspy shout. This is because Titan has more nitrogen than Earth, and because sound travels a bit slower. Luckily, you can still understand each other here. The robot tells you that it needs to absorb a bit more energy from its solar panels before taking off, so you have a look around. This moon is one of the only things in the solar system that has fixed bodies of liquid like rivers, lakes, and seas on its surface. You can understand why the robot got lost now, given how similar Titan is to Earth. Titan even has liquid cycles, with rain, evaporation, and condensation. This isn't water like back on Earth, though. The main liquid here is methane. Scientists think that there may be volcanic activity, but instead of molten hot lava spewing out, it's water. Other planets, like Mars, have ice on the peaks of their mountains and evidence of water beneath the surface, but nothing is as close to Earth as Titan. Some scientists believe that this moon could be our next home billions of years from now. The sun's temperature will increase by then, making the Earth's atmosphere uninhabitable. By then, Titan's cool temperatures will be good enough to create stable oceans and sustain life. The robot finally gathers enough electricity to fly away, so you can head home. It'll be nice to have a normal conversation where your voice doesn't sound like an exaggerated cartoon. Whew.
According to a new unpublished study, one of the brightest stars you can see in the night sky is likely to explode within our lifetime. The star in question is a red giant called Betelgeuse. It's located in the left shoulder of the constellation of Orion. The star might have no more than 300 years' worth of fuel left in its core. Once it burns through these last reserves, the core will collapse, forming a black hole. As for the star's outer layers, they are likely to be blasted out into space at a mind-boggling 25,000 miles per second. This is what astronomers call a supernova. If Betelgeuse goes supernova, it will be a spectacular sight to watch from Earth. The star is comparatively not far from our planets, just 650 light-years away. So those layers of ejected gas and dust will shine as bright as the full moon. It will also last for several weeks. Interestingly, most astronomers don't believe Betelgeuse is ready to go kaboom yet. Then, what makes the authors of the new paper think otherwise? Well, this star is definitely a red giant that has burned through its primary fuel, hydrogen. At the moment, it's most likely fusing helium remaining in its core into some heavier elements. The point at which a star runs out of its hydrogen is unmissable. When a star is short on hydrogen, it needs to put extra energy into igniting the helium created during the process of hydrogen fusion. These additional efforts make such a star expand dozens of times beyond its original size. It also becomes redder and cooler in the process. Astronomers know that Betelgeuse is very, very large. If you placed it at the center of our solar system, its outer atmosphere would reach so far that it would swallow Jupiter. But it's hard to measure the exact diameter of the star. All because Betelgeuse is not your regular smooth ball of plasma. Instead, it's a lumpy chunk of boiling gas bubbles hiding behind dust clouds. This is the main reason why measuring the size of the star isn't easy. But to determine the star's remaining lifetime, we must know its diameter. And a team of scientists from Japan suggests that Betelgeuse is larger than most astronomers think. The star is known to pulsate. It expands and shrinks, dims and brightens again and again at regular intervals. Researchers link these changes to the periodical expansion of the star's outer region. There are other oddities in the behavior of the star. They appear on a regular basis too. Astronomers see the connection between these quirks and turbulent processes taking place inside the star, which seems ready to go out. The research team behind the new study believes that Betelgeuse's main pulsation mode is represented by the 2,200-day cycle, and the 420-day brightness variation might be the star's secondary quirk. For this scenario to work, Betelgeuse needs to be up to 1/3 wider. And to be as wide as necessary for this model, the star has to be in a later stage of its life, done with burning helium and, instead, running on carbon received from previous fusion of helium atoms. Whether a red giant is burning helium or carbon makes a great difference in terms of how much time it has left. If it's still in its helium-burning phase, the red giant can live for tens of thousands of years. But if it's already in the carbon-burning stage, the end is near and might come within a few thousand years. In the case of Betelgeuse, we can't determine exactly how much carbon the star still has, but carbon exhaustion might happen as soon as in 300 years. After that, fusions of heavier elements might take a few dozens of years. When it's over, the core will collapse and a supernova explosion will occur.
We all remember seeing the Apollo lunar rover on the Moon built for space missions in the 70s. Besides transporting astronauts for certain explorations, they were used for taking pictures and collecting soil samples for scientists to study. The vehicle was designed by Boeing, the company famous for building airplanes, and cost around $38 million to build. The kind of loose change you'd find today in Elon Musk's couch. In the far future, technologies will be so advanced that a regular car for the Moon will behave like a regular SUV we have today. It'll have a sleek look and might be produced by some famous car manufacturers available. Back then, the lunar rover used a T-shaped throttle to move the car left, right, backward, and forward. The futuristic one can be voice-controlled and require minimal human control. And we can't leave out the Earth roof. Hey, you really don't need a moon roof on the Moon. Anyway, the Moon's driving conditions are not that extreme compared to Mars or other planets. It's hard to believe that the first landing craft to enter Mars was Viking 1, launched on August 20, 1975. It arrived at Mars on June 19, 1976. But decades later, Curiosity, which had 6 legs and 6 wheels attached, took the stage as the cute robot explorer. It was designed for the rough terrain, so in the distant future, a human-operated vehicle can have a similar design for people who want to cruise by the Mars sunset. For any human-designed car to work on planets other than the Earth, they have to be electric or anything else that can produce an unlimited supply of energy. Gas-powered vehicles won't work in the vacuum of space, and certainly not on any planet other than our own. It can be powered by the strong sun and convert the energy to run the vehicle. The interior has to accommodate the extreme conditions on the planet, since the atmosphere is very thin and unbreathable. It has to be very warm, since Mars can reach sub-zero temperatures. The matter of gravity isn't that extreme, but frequent dust storms are the problem. The vehicle will also have wheels attached to legs to maneuver around properly, since the terrain is difficult to get around in. Now, my 2 cents here? Well, I think an all-leather interior with 6-way seats front and back will be nice. Adding a 12-speaker sound system with RU Sirius FM radio is a must. Did I mention the Earth roof? Yeah, I did. And don't forget the 60/40 fold-down rear seats so you'll have plenty of room to haul your camping gear on your weekend escapes. Meanwhile, it's still possible to have a panoramic glass view of the interior in a project like a tour bus on Mars. There are plenty of locations to discover, like the tallest mountain in our solar system and the snowy carbon peaks. The Red Planet can also have an express train ride that can take you from one place to another. It'll be one of those luxurious cabins that will take you from one landmark to another since Mars becomes colonized and established. The train will also be electric-powered or powered by another power source. Mars is a place where it's possible to have all kinds of vehicles, since the conditions aren't that different from Earth's. Just don't go outside without a helmet. If we designed a vehicle for Mercury, then get ready for bright light from the sun, in which case we would need to add industrial visors and blackout strips around the glass so that the sun won't get to us. At least we won't have to worry about the heat, since Mercury isn't the hottest planet in our solar system. Well, the temperatures can reach a soaring 800 degrees on a warm sunny day and drop down to minus 300 degrees at night. The vehicle will have to have multiple layers and coatings to withstand the conditions, and it will most likely have spider legs to move, since rubber wheels will melt instantly. And to save itself from damage, it'll need to dig underground to hide from the sun and atmosphere, just like a crab or those spiders that create hatch floors. Driving a vehicle on Pluto will be very challenging, considering that it's the furthest planet from the sun. Now, Pluto is technically not a planet anymore, but it's still a large enough mass to explore. Temperatures there can reach below 400 degrees. A mere jacket won't cut it. The vehicle will need super insulation to keep the operator warm and fuzzy. Methane ice surrounds the land and covers the mountains. Gravity is also an issue since it's very weak, which will make you float in the air. Now, designing a vehicle for Pluto will be tricky. The key for it to move and not freeze will be how the legs move. It'll also have legs like the one on Mercury, but will have a lot of heat generated to keep warm. The weight is enough to keep this vehicle in place. However, that can't be said for Neptune, the windiest planet in our solar system. It's impossible to breathe in the atmosphere, and the atmospheric pressure will crush you. Designing a vehicle is challenging, considering the many external factors, and will have to be pressurized to counter the external atmosphere. It will also need a special coating to counter the harsh temperatures. And because Neptune is extremely windy, it would need some sort of anchor to keep it in place, something like a large drill that shoots from the belly of the car and digs underground. It will also have spider legs to move around, but they'll behave in a similar motion to how a camel walks. That way, it can maintain its center of gravity. Now, Venus is the hottest planet in our solar system, with temperatures reaching 1,000 degrees. The pressure will crush your vehicle like a can, so it needs proper internal pressure to balance it out. This car will require all the upgrades for countering the heat. It will need proper coating, no glass, and even a special color to reflect the heat. Nothing can actually stay on the ground for too long, so spider legs won't really work. It'll need to hover slightly above the ground and float around. Now, Saturn is the second largest planet in our solar system and has a very windy upper atmosphere and very strong gravity. The rings around it are made up of ice materials that can range from the size of a pebble to the size of a school bus. The pressure is so strong that you'd be crushed the second you reach its atmosphere. Designing a vehicle would be very challenging and weird. It'll need the best technology for withstanding the crushing pressures and harsh temperatures. The vehicle will have to be large and composed of many internal layers. Since the upper atmosphere is windy, the vehicle will have to remain on the ground for as long as possible. Scientists don't know much of what the surface looks like, so the vehicle will have to be prepared to move on solid surfaces, liquid, and anything else in between. Now, I think it's called slop. It'll need mechanical arms to maneuver through the possible rugged terrain and multiple legs like a centipede. Those arms can pick up things and move them out of the way if it faces some obstacles. The long body can also detach itself and break into smaller pods for a quick escape. From what, we don't yet know. No human can step foot outside even if they wear protective gear. Robots will have to be deployed to test how human bodies can withstand the conditions. Jupiter has harsher conditions than Saturn, with the red spot being the most dangerous area on the planet. It's an extremely large area that has hurricane-like storms that have been going on for years. The vehicle will resemble that of Saturn, but extra heavy-duty. Scientists also don't know what's happening on the surface except for the crushing atmospheric pressure. The vehicle won't be able to move on the surface if it were to pass through the red spot, so it'll have to dig underground and move underneath. For that, it'll require a huge drill and many self-automated drones and vehicles that can be deployed from the main vehicle to help with digging and surveying. Once underground, it'll have legs that will help it crawl and a giant drill nose to dig further. Many of the body parts can also break off into smaller pods to get through certain terrains, but can be easily reattached. The craziest place where we can launch a vehicle is the Sun. There's no way to imagine it except being self-automated. Any human on board won't make it halfway in the journey. The launch will have to be from Mercury in a protective facility sheltered from the harsh temperatures. The vehicle will have to be made out of the best resources to withstand the extreme heat and gases, and won't last more than a couple of minutes once nearby. It'll most likely resemble a satellite and float around to take some footage for us to study. It'll probably cost trillions of dollars, but the results will be worth it, won't they?
Most of those twinkling dots scattered across the night sky seem unreachable. But one of them is Betelgeuse, a star so enormous and nearby that you can see it with the naked eye. To find it, locate the first 3 big dots in the Orion's belt. A reddish star to the left is Betelgeuse. It's one of the brightest stars we can see from Earth. and it's just 640 light-years away. No big deal. Betelgeuse has a blue-white O-type star, which is one of the hottest types to exist. Betelgeuse was scorching hot, reaching temperatures of about 90,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Although that was back in the day, now it's an elderly star, and it cooled down to just 5,800 degrees. You know, vacation weather. Blue-white stars are absolutely massive and burn incredibly bright because they have loads of hydrogen fuel. But they have a price to pay for this glory. They burn through their fuel super quickly. As they age, they transform into red giants. This is exactly what happened to Betelgeuse. It burned through its hydrogen and started burning helium instead. This caused its outer layers to puff up like a balloon, turning it into a red supergiant and making it one of the largest stars out there. Now it's stretching over 700 million miles in diameter. Now it's about 1,000 times bigger than our Sun. If Betelgeuse replaced it, it would swallow up Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, even Jupiter. And its atmosphere would almost reach Saturn. But something strange has been going on. Betelgeuse spinning way faster than it should for a star of its size. Huge stars like Betelgeuse are expected to rotate slowly, but it suddenly started spinning at a rate of about 3 miles per second. Thanks to powerful radio telescopes, Betelgeuse's orange-red surface can be seen in detail. That's how we learned that it often changes its brightness. Sometimes Betelgeuse shines super brightly and then gets very dim. This happens about every 400 days. And recently, a telescope called ALMA, which is made up of many antennas working together as one, showed that Betelgeuse's surface seems to be moving unevenly. It's like one side is coming towards us while the other is moving away. But all of it might be a trick of light. Betelgeuse isn't as smooth as our Sun. Instead, it's super chunky. Its surface is like a boiling cauldron. It's bubbling and churning incredibly fiercely. Imagine giant plumes of hot gas erupting from its core, reaching the surface and then vanishing back inside. And these bubbles are bigger not only than the Sun, but Earth's entire orbit around the Sun. These bubbles also rise and fall super quickly, even faster than a spacecraft. And maybe this tricks our telescopes into seeing it spin faster than it really does. Some astronomers also think that Betelgeuse could have swallowed up another star, and this gave it a spin boost. But these are all just theories. Things got even more complicated when Betelgeuse dimmed once again, this time in a pretty unexpected way. What's interesting, it was discovered using a weather satellite. A regular telescope had a hard time seeing Betelgeuse clearly because of Earth's atmosphere. So they used a satellite that normally watches Earth's weather, but can also take pictures of space. As we mentioned, it usually brightens and dims about every 400 days. But recently, it suddenly dimmed by 2.5 times more than ever before. This event got the name the Great Dimming. The first theory said that Betelgeuse cooled down and sneezed out a bunch of material, creating a massive dust cloud. This cloud blocked the view of the star, making it look much fainter than usual. They also noticed something strange happening to that dust. It started behaving differently, which might be a sign that something deep inside the star was causing trouble. Betelgeuse's brightening and dimming cycle now happens faster in just 200 days instead of 400. And to add to the mystery, in the spring of 2023, it started shining even brighter than it normally does at its peak. Why is this frightening? Because Betelgeuse might be preparing for its grand finale, and this wouldn't be very good for Earth. We might be on the verge of a supernova. When massive stars like Betelgeuse run out of fuel in their cores, they start burning different elements like carbon, oxygen, and silicon. Eventually, they end up with iron in their cores. At that moment, everything changes. Adding helium to iron doesn't produce energy like other reactions do. Instead, it sucks up energy. This causes the star's core to collapse, leading to what's called a core collapse supernova. A spectacular, breathtaking show. Supernovas are so bright that they can outshine entire galaxies. But a Betelgeuse supernova would be special. Because it's relatively close to us, it would be so bright that we could see it even during the day. When it happens, Betelgeuse will shine as brightly as a full moon, but all that light will be concentrated in one point. For about 2 months, it will be so bright that you could read a book just from the light of the supernova, even if you turned off all the city lights and had a clear sky. The idea of witnessing Betelgeuse explode as a supernova is truly thrilling. After all, the last time a star went supernova in our galaxy was way back in the time of Johannes Kepler, more than 4 centuries ago. That event, known as the SN 1604 or Kepler supernova, dazzled the sky for weeks. But don't get too excited yet. We're not sure when exactly it'll happen. One study says that the star might be in its carbon-burning phase. If we're near the end of that stage, then Betelgeuse might blow up very soon, during the next tens of years. But it's nearly impossible to determine because during that last phase, the star barely changes at all. Even though Betelgeuse is close enough for us to study its surface, we can't peek inside its core to see what's really happening with it. We might as well be at the beginning of the carbon-burning phase, and in that case, we might have to wait 1,000 more years before that cool supernova. Another study says that Betelgeuse might have less than 300 years of fuel left in its core. They say that Betelgeuse is known to expand and contract regularly, and its pulsation pattern hints that Betelgeuse is much larger than we previously thought. This would suggest that the star is further along in its life cycle and closer to going supernova. Other guesses come from observations of similar stars. For example, a star called VYCMA in our galaxy is thought to be closer to going supernova than Betelgeuse, and it's been dimming steadily over the past century, unlike the relatively stable Betelgeuse. If Betelgeuse was about to go supernova, it would dim steadily and very quickly. Also, historical records suggest that about 2,000 years ago, people saw Betelgeuse as yellow, not red. If that's the case, then we might be in its early last days after all. In other words, we have no idea whether it will go supernova tomorrow or in 1,000 years. We just gotta wait and see. But let's say it goes supernova tomorrow. What happens to us then? The 1987 supernova in the Large Magellanic Cloud showed that the effects from the supernova might be so strong we can sense it even from very far distances. The Large Magellanic Cloud is almost 170,000 light-years away, and we still detected the radiation. It's kinda hard to say exactly what the danger zone is. A rough estimate could be around 100 light-years. Luckily, Betelgeuse won't pose any danger to humans. It's hundreds of light-years away, and its supernova won't influence us in any way. We'll be able to enjoy its supernova beauty without any harm.
Now, it's been a long time since there was a supernova in the Milky Way. Over 400 years to be precise. So hey, we're long overdue. So here are the most likely stars to go boom, if they haven't already. At the top of the list must be the Southern Hemisphere star Eta Carinae. Greek letters before the name of the constellation indicate the rank of the star's brightness in that constellation. Sir Edmund Halley, in 1677, recorded Eta Carinae as the 7th brightest star in the constellation Carina, Eta being the 7th letter in the Greek alphabet. It might not have looked very bright to Sir Edmund and his contemporaries in the 17th century, but modern studies of Eta Carinae estimate it's 5 million times more luminous than our Sun. Luminous is a technical word astronomers use. It doesn't just mean brightness. Luminosity refers to the total energy released at all frequencies. Eta Carinae releases 5 million times more energy than the Sun. Truly one of the whoppers of the Milky Way, Eta Carinae is 100 times more massive and 240 times larger than our yellow-white dwarf sun, Sol. Obviously, since it appears dim, Eta Carinae is pretty far away, about 7,500 light-years away. Yet even at this distance, if this star goes hypernova, it can still impact Earth's ozone layer, disrupt satellite communications, and harm astronauts. 159 years after Halley's observation, Eta Carinae experienced a nova-like explosion. It increased from a relatively dim star to become the second brightest star visible from Earth, but only for a period of 27 years. From 1836 until 1863, Eta Carinae was the second brightest visible star after Sirius, the dog star, and Sirius is only about 8 light-years away. Since 1863, aside from a couple of flare-ups, Eta Carinae has dimmed back down to its original brightness at magnitude 4.5. Now, astronomers owe us a small apology, which we don't expect to get anytime soon, for star magnitude nomenclature. The brighter a star is, or planet, or moon, the lower its magnitude. Thus, stars brighter than first magnitude are either zero magnitude or negative magnitude. The full moon, for example, is magnitude negative 13. A magnitude positive 4.5 star, like Eta Carinae, is quite dim as seen from Earth, but it's clearly visible in a night sky without light pollution or clouds if you live anywhere south of the latitude of Cairo, Egypt. 30 degrees north latitude is the farthest north you can see this star. Now, listen up. Eta Carinae is currently up to something. It's been brightening again and is now brighter than at any time since 1864. It's a complex situation. Eta Carinae is really two stars, Eta Carinae A and Eta Carinae, what's your guess? Oh, B. There's a third star nearby that's also interacting with the double star's dynamics. Now, without looking, I'm guessing it's named Eta Carinae C. Good guess. Blown out into two incredibly massive globes of gas that are expanding at 20 million miles per hour, Eta Carinae is, without a doubt, one of the strangest looking stars you'll ever see. Remember, it's located at a great distance of 7,500 light-years away from us. And if anything had happened to Eta Carinae in the last 7,500 years, like going hypernova, we wouldn't be able to see it, because none of Eta Carinae's electromagnetic radiation would have gotten here yet. Astronomers are keeping a close watch on Eta Carinae because it can go hypernova at any time. Or maybe it already did 5,000 years ago, in which case we'd only have to wait another 2,500 years to see it. Yeah, like I'll put it in my planner. Now, from a list of over 30 likely candidate stars that might go supernova, Rho Cassiopeiae is many astronomers' choice. Another Greek letter, Rho, is the 17th letter in the Greek alphabet. It means that Rho Cassiopeiae is the star with the 17th brightest apparent magnitude in the constellation Cassiopeia. Yet Rho Cass, a nickname, is only one of 7 known yellow hypergiant stars in the Milky Way. It's another whopper. To be seen at magnitude 4.5 from a distance of about 10,000 light-years away, Rho Cass must be a very large star, a hypergiant. Placed where the Sun is, Rho Cass would encompass the orbit of Mars. But it's still yellow. It's not a red giant star. Red indicates a cooler surface temperature. Rho Cass, as huge as it is still as hot on its surface as our Sun, or even a little hotter. That can only mean two things. Deep inside its core, Rho Cass is fusing atoms much heavier than hydrogen or helium. Plus, Rho Cass is producing much more energy than a red giant star. In the year 2000, Rho Cass erupted massively. It brightened by 2 orders of magnitude as it ejected 10,000 times the mass of Earth into space at 4 times the speed of sound. Astronomers detected the signature of titanium oxide in this eruption. This means that Rho Cass is much closer to going supernova, or in this particular case, hypernova, than astronomers used to assume. Iron is just a few steps above titanium in the periodic table, and when iron forms, fusion stops and a star collapses. Rho Cass is really close, or more correctly, was really close. Because the eruption we saw in the year 2000 really happened 10,000 years before, many astronomers think Rho Cass has already gone hypernova, formed a black hole, and doesn't even exist anymore. Meanwhile, Betelgeuse caught everyone's attention not so long ago. The star, not the movie. It dimmed dramatically, appearing only 37% as bright as it usually is. Is it getting ready to go supernova? Betelgeuse is by far the brightest star in the whole sky, in infrared light. This is an important fact because it relates to Betelgeuse's status as a supernova candidate, as we shall soon see. Betelgeuse is also named Alpha Orionis, another Greek letter designation. So we should conclude that Betelgeuse is the brightest star in Orion, right? Wrong. It's the second brightest star in its constellation. Rigel, or Beta Orionis, is the brightest one in that region. Figure that one out. It may be because Betelgeuse is classified as a semi-regular variable star, which sounds kind of redundant to me. Its approximately 400-day cycle of pulsation changes its brightness by about 1 full magnitude, going from much brighter than a first magnitude star to closer to a second magnitude star. But never was Betelgeuse observed to dim so rapidly or so drastically as it did recently. So what's going on with it? Well, from late 2019 to mid-2020, Betelgeuse went through a period of substantial dimming during a mass ejection event. The world astronomy community jumped on the situation, and in the course of their investigations, they came up with some surprising new factual data on Betelgeuse. First, Betelgeuse is not as far away as we once thought. The new, more accurate distance for Betelgeuse is 548 light-years. That's 25% closer than previously measured. The second new fact, Betelgeuse's diameter has been reduced by the same percentage. The star is now known to be 25% smaller than previously believed. The cause of Betelgeuse's dramatic dimming was also determined. The giant star ejected a cloud of gas that contained magnesium. The cloud blocked a large portion of the light coming from Betelgeuse and made it appear visually much dimmer than it really was. Magnesium is not halfway to iron on the periodic table, which means Betelgeuse is not as far along on the path to a supernova as was suspected previously. When iron starts forming in the star, it means that this star is close to shutting down its fusion reactions. The next step is implosion. We aren't quite there yet with Betelgeuse. This star emits most of its energy as infrared light, and it also indicates that its core is most probably still burning helium, and not something that would greatly increase the amount of heat, like carbon for instance. Betelgeuse will still go supernova, but not for another 100,000 years. So you can cross it off your supernova list for the time being. And as for how to correctly pronounce Betelgeuse, you can say it any way you like. There are as many different pronunciations out there as there are people who think they know how to pronounce it correctly. Now, supernova 1987A caught astronomers off guard when it lit up the large Magellanic Cloud 100,000 plus light-years away from the Milky Way. That's when attention was turned to a similar star much closer to Earth, Rigel, in the constellation of Orion. Could Rigel surprise us and suddenly go supernova? There's something called the supernova problem that you should, probably know about because it may relate to Rigel going supernova or not. It seems that stars over 17 solar masses don't always go supernova. Recently, a red giant star simply vanished. Once again, it didn't go supernova, it disappeared. This had often been happening in computer simulations of supernovae, and now it finally occurred in real life. Rigel's mass is 21 solar masses. In other words, it's 21 times more massive than our Sun. So, will Rigel go supernova or simply vanish into a black hole that it'll create in its core? Astronomers and physicists continue their work of learning more about the dynamics of massive stars, scouring the sky for the next supernova in the Milky Way. Meanwhile, we can rest confident that we on Earth are in no danger from the harmful effects of nearby supernova explosions. We live in a nice, quiet, peaceful, stellar neighborhood, except for those Martians next door.
All the stars we see, including our Sun, are in a balance of powers. Stars are very heavy objects, so they have strong gravity, which presses them from the outside and makes them shrink. But inside a star, while it burns fuel, there are nuclear reactions that produce incredible amounts of energy. This energy is the light and heat that we feel during the day. But most importantly, these reactions increase the pressure inside the star and create a force that is fighting with gravity. so as long as the star has a full tank, it's safe. But then, the fuel runs out, the pressure inside the star falls, and the gravity wins. A star the size of our Sun can shine for about 10 billion years. Specifically, our lovely Sun is about 4.5 billion years old and has already burned half its fuel. The next stage in a star's life comes when it runs out of juice. Internal pressure drops, but gravity continues to press. At some point, a star simply collapses under its own weight and shrinks to the size of its core at the speed of almost a quarter of the speed of light. In less than half a second, a huge star turns into a small and dense object. This rapid collapse creates incredible shock waves that cause the upper layers of the star to explode. Now, an incredible amount of energy and matter is thrown into outer space. At this moment, luminosity of the star increases millions or even billions of times. This is the flash that our scientists can see with super powerful telescopes. But the light from this explosion doesn't reach our planet until many years later, so in fact, this star has long since faded. There are several options at this point. It all depends on the size of the star. If its mass is small, about the mass of our Sun, then for several months, this flash will become brighter and brighter until it reaches its peak. Then, the energy of the explosion will begin to dissipate, gradually fading and cooling down. A few years will pass, and the temperature of the former star will match that of space, and it will simply cease to exist. But the heavier the star, the more interesting the events will be. Heavy stars burn their fuel too quickly and have a much shorter lifespan. Stars weighing about 8 masses of the Sun can collapse into a rather unusual object, which is rarely found in the universe, a neutron star. This dull ball is only 6 to 12 miles wide and covered with a hard metal crust about half a mile thick. Neutron stars can weigh about 2 suns and have a strong gravity force. If you feel comfortable and in good shape on Earth, you wouldn't even be able to lift a needle or a match here. What's more, you would be pressed to the surface like a pancake and just unable to move. But there are stars dozens of times heavier than the Sun. An explosion of such a supernova, which weighs at least 40 times more than the Sun, gives birth to the most inexplicable and mysterious object in the universe, a black hole. At first, an incredibly bright explosion occurs. A shockwave spreads, carrying dust and matter of the former star around like a fog. And at the place of the explosion, only a small black disk is left. This black abyss is the heaviest object in the universe. It's so heavy that its gravity curves space-time around it. Yes, the closer you are to a black hole, the slower time will go for you. If you could get close enough to one of them, spend a couple of minutes in its orbit, and return to Earth, you would simply not recognize your home. 1 minute near a black hole can be a month, a year, or a decade on Earth. This depends on how heavy the black hole is. But don't get too close. The force of its gravity is so strong that even light can't escape from it. Humanity also knows about the existence of supermassive black holes. They gradually build up their mass, feeding on different cosmic objects just like a predator. Usually, such supermassive black holes lie in the centers of galaxies, and their gravity is so strong they can hold countless stars near them. For example, this is the only photo of a black hole, which is located in the center of the Messier 87 galaxy. The orange glow around it is its event horizon. That's the remains of the light from the objects this black hole has swallowed. You're quite safe though. The closest black hole is 1,120 light-years away. But supernovae can explode not only when gravity wins the fight with the star's internal forces, Sometimes the opposite happens. The nuclear fusion inside the star begins to affect much more matter than normal. The pressure inside a star increases and it defeats the force of gravity that exerts pressure on the star from outside. At this point, there's a boom! This never happens by itself, and this type of supernova is only possible in binary star systems. Two stars are spinning around each other. One star begins to swallow the substance from the other. Then, the nuclear reactions inside it are no longer in balance, and a supernova explodes. For some time, scientists believed that such an explosion could occur in 2022. There's such a binary system in the Swan constellation at a distance of 1,800 light-years from the Sun. The luminous red nova should have occurred here. Such a red flash would have been visible to the naked eye for months. And after the explosion itself and the merger of two stars, a new, hotter, and heavier star was to appear in their place. But a new analysis of the data revealed a calculation error, and this event will not happen soon after all. So now we see that a supernova explosion is a very dangerous event, and it can cause great harm to our planet if it happens close enough. The main danger is gamma rays. This is the radiation that comes from the explosion. When these rays reach the Earth, they affect our space shield, the atmosphere. They reduce the ozone layer and make us vulnerable to solar radiation and cosmic rays. In this case, all life on the planet is in incredible danger. And the bad news is that such an explosion could happen quite soon. Betelgeuse, the brightest star in the night sky, about 17 times larger than the Sun and 8.5 billion years old. It's begun to exhaust its fuel reserves. Scientists predict that this giant will explode like a supernova at any moment within the next 10,000 years. So it may happen in a few centuries or even tomorrow. Everything will happen as follows. Betelgeuse will collapse in a fraction of a second, and then it will explode so brightly that it will look like a second moon in the night sky. We will observe a new bright spot in the sky for weeks or even months. But then, it will begin to fade until it completely disappears. Not without a trace though. In its place, there will be a neutron star, weighing 1.5 times the Sun. It will be one of the biggest events that humanity has ever seen. Still, we have nothing to be afraid of. Betelgeuse is about 550 light-years away from us, so its X-rays and ultraviolet light will not affect us. A much greater danger is posed by the release of material that occurs in a supernova explosion. But this shouldn't make you worried either. The shock wave won't reach the Earth until 6 million years later, and it will be suppressed by the oncoming solar wind. So if we see Betelgeuse explode today, it will be an epic sight. But in fact, the star will not exist at the time, because it will mean the event itself happened almost 6 centuries ago. It's just that now the light from it has reached us. Some scientists believe that the Ordovician Silurian extinction events, which occurred almost 500 million years ago, happened exactly because of a star explosion. Then, almost 60% of marine vertebrates went extinct. Yet, it was not a supernova, but a hypernova. That is what scientists call explosions of stars 100 to 150 times larger than the Sun. In addition to the abnormal weight, the star must rotate very quickly. Such objects are very rare. In our galaxy, there are few of them, and scientists believe that hypernovae occur about once in 200 million years.
Can a planet be bigger than its parent star? Well, if you mean a star like our Sun, it's highly unlikely. But what if it was a white dwarf? the remnant of a star similar to ours that went out after shedding its outer layers and leaving behind nothing but the core? This core is what we call a white dwarf. Usually, it's around the size of our home planet. If a star had a planet bigger than Earth before it extinguished, it's possible that such a planet could survive all the chaos. In this case, a planet that is bigger than its star might actually exist. And we've even found planetary systems like this. But there's one problem. A white dwarf isn't a real star like our sun anymore. It doesn't produce energy, just sits out there getting cooler and cooler. So probably such systems don't count. For comparison, the sun is working non-stop. It is fusing hydrogen into helium in its core. It has been doing it for more than 4 billion years and is going to keep doing it for the next 7 or 8 billion years. The sun is 10 times as wide as the largest planet in our solar system, gas giant Jupiter. And sadly, you can't get a planet much larger than that. If you start adding mass to such a world, it will get smaller, not bigger. So it seems you can find a planet larger than the sun. But there are also dim red dwarf stars. They're the smallest out there, barely massive enough to maintain fusion in their cores. The tiniest stars that we know about have been discovered recently. If astronomers' conclusions are correct, then both of them can hardly fuse hydrogen into helium. And it takes about 0.077 times the sun's mass, or 75 masses of Jupiter, to be able to do that. And still, they're real stars, just very tiny, smaller than Jupiter. One of them is only about the size of Saturn, which must mean that stars can have planets bigger than they are, right? Well, theoretically. When it comes to practice, you can hardly find such planetary systems. We've found and observed quite a lot of exoplanets, which are worlds orbiting other stars. It seems that there are indeed loads of trends out there in space, different masses, sizes, brightness, and so on. But the main trend? Red dwarfs don't usually have gas giants orbiting them. If they do have planets, those are typically small, rocky worlds, more like Earth. Those are also called terrestrial planets. For example, a red dwarf called TRAPPIST-1 has 7 Earth-sized planets orbiting it. But gas giants circling around red dwarfs are extremely rare. Hardly 1 in 100 tiny stars can boast such a planet. This number can be even smaller since the research has been done using candidate planets which haven't been confirmed yet. Plus, the smallest stars are also the dimmest. It means they are extremely hard to detect, and it's incredibly hard to figure out whether they have planets orbiting them, and if they do, whether these planets are gas giants or terrestrial worlds. Still, it's possible that a system where the planet is larger than its parent star exists. But the probability is statistically very low. At the same time, red dwarf stars are very numerous. They're actually the most common kind of star in the galaxy, making up around 70% of all stars. And even though really tiny red dwarfs are relatively rare, there still must be millions or probably even billions of them in the galaxy. And if there's even a small fraction of red dwarfs with gas giants orbiting them, it might still mean that a lot of such systems exist in total, and some of them can have planets bigger than their host star.
So, we might be getting closer to finding a massive icy planet beyond Neptune's orbit. Yeah, sorry Pluto, still not you. Recently, some universe mapping using data from a telescope in Hawaii eliminated about 78% of the possible locations for this mysterious Waldo from space. Some people call it Planet 9, while others prefer Planet X. Either way, it's been causing controversy since its existence was first proposed, and that is mainly because no study so far can answer the big question: does it really exist? If discovered, Planet 9 would rank as the 5th largest planet in our solar system, with a mass 10 times that of Earth. It's also theorized to be gaseous, like Uranus. The initial study on Planet 9, dating back to 2016, suggests that this colossal new planet orbits the Sun 29 times farther out than Neptune, which sits at about 2.8 billion miles. As a result, the Planet 9 would take between 10,000 and 20,000 years to complete a single orbit around the Sun. If confirmed, This yet-to-be-understood world would dominate a region larger than any other known planet in our cosmic neighborhood. These are all intriguing hypotheses, but without a single piece of evidence or observation to back them up. Before dismissing this as a wild guess, it is important to note that these researchers relied on complex mathematical modeling and computer simulations to speculate about the planet's characteristics, because that's what they do. The hypothetical presence of this planet would explain various mysterious features located beyond Neptune. We are specifically talking about the Kuiper Belt, a huge donut-shaped region filled with icy debris left over from the formation of the solar system, including comets and dwarf planets like Pluto. What happens is that the 6 farthest objects in the Kuiper Belt exhibit elliptical orbits that are all oriented in a similar direction within physical space and tilted approximately 30 degrees downward relative to the orbital plane of our 8 known planets. What's strange here is that, despite their distinct orbital velocities around the solar system, they maintain this alignment. The likelihood of such alignment occurring randomly is extremely low, around 0.007%. So, here comes Planet 9, a hypothetical massive celestial body that offers a plausible explanation for this strange phenomenon, potentially exerting gravitational influence to shape these orbits. The initial theory didn't hold up for long, facing accusations of observational bias and calculation errors. Then, in 2017, another study popped up, sparking back the idea that maybe Planet 9 is out there after all. This time, Spanish astronomers tried a novel approach, focusing on observing extreme trans-Neptunian objects. These celestial bodies orbit the Sun in highly stretched elliptical paths, with average distances exceeding 13 billion miles. The research suggests that the distances between these objects' nodes and the Sun might provide clues to Planet 9's location. You see, these nodes are the points where a celestial body's orbit intersects the solar system's plane. When these objects reach these points, they're more likely to interact with other solar system bodies, potentially causing significant changes in their orbits or even collisions. So, if the trajectory of these extreme trans-Neptunian objects remains stable, everything's fine. But if it's not, well, that's a sign that something else, something big, is messing with their path. And that's exactly what the research found. There is something unseen out there, throwing these objects off course. And that something could be a planet, chilling at a distance between 300 to 400 times farther from the Sun than Earth. To this day, the study of the extreme trans-Neptunian objects is the strongest evidence we've got for Planet 9's existence. And if you're still not convinced by this theory, know that strange motions like these have led to planetary discoveries before. Neptune, for instance, was spotted because Uranus's motion didn't quite agree with the predictions of Newtonian gravity. But the deflection of its orbit could be explained if it was caused by a pull of an undiscovered planet. And just like that, we discovered Neptune. Now, the year is 2021, and there's all this buzz about Planet 9 again. After correcting some old guesses, studies are now leaning towards the idea that this mystery world follows an epic loop around the Sun every 7,000 years. That is massive news, because it means this planet might be closer than we ever thought, making it easier for our telescopes to spot it. The paper also suggests there is a whopping 99% chance that the funky orbits of these distant objects are all because of this unseen planet, not just some cosmic coincidence. Now, the odds of this whole situation being a fluke are down to a 1 in 250 chance, which is much better than the 1 in 10,000 chance back in 2016. All these optimistic numbers have brought us to where we are today, keeping our hopes and working on better equipment to continue the mission of spotting Planet 9. As mentioned earlier, researchers in Hawaii created some kind of treasure map utilizing the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System to eliminate 78% of its locations. This is great news, considering how challenging it is to find a planet-sized needle in a cosmic haystack. But unfortunately, Planet 9's presence remains a ghost in the dark outer reaches of our solar system. Enthusiasts are still convinced of its existence and believe it is only a matter of time before we celebrate the discovery of Earth's new cosmic cousin. They're putting their hopes on the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, which is currently under construction in Chile and is scheduled to begin science operations in late 2025. Over the course of 10 years, this observatory will scan the entire southern hemisphere sky every few nights with a 27-foot, fast-moving telescope equipped with the largest digital camera in the world. The idea is to catalog everything in the solar system, reaching out to and beyond Neptune, and tracking the movements of millions of celestial objects, including space junk, asteroids, comets, and stars. If Planet 9 is indeed out there, this next-generation telescope could be the one to find it. The existence of this mysterious planet is far from being universally accepted in the scientific community. That is simply because Planet 9 isn't the only explanation for the strange phenomenon occurring beyond Neptune. One theory suggests that a group of distant objects, such as dwarf planets, comets, and moons, might be collectively influencing the orbits of the extreme trans-Neptunian objects. Others believe that a black hole is behind all this. These compressed masses are some of the densest objects in the universe, potentially capable of affecting the orbits of other masses, like how this supposed ghost Planet 9 is believed to be doing. Another bold perspective suggests that our current understanding of the laws of gravity is flawed, actually incomplete. This theory, known as modified Newtonian dynamics, proposes that these distant icy objects exhibit strange behavior not due to influence from another planet, but rather because the immense gravitational field of the Milky Way is influencing them. However, even supporters of this theory acknowledge that it is too early to draw firm conclusions, and much more extensive research is still required. While we continue our relentless hunt for Planet 9, some astronomers have taken it a step further, suggesting the existence of a hypothetical Planet 10. This world has a mass and size like that of Mars or Earth and is located on the edges of the Kuiper Belt. But the thing is, if this alleged Planet 10 is indeed as small as scientists believe, it might not have enough gravity to clear its orbit of debris. And that is pretty similar to what happens with Pluto, being one of the reasons why it got into trouble back in 2006. So yeah, it's better not to get too excited. This supposed Planet 10 might end up classified as another dwarf planet.
Across millennia, scattered among clay tablets, sacred scrolls, and whispered myths, humanity has preserved haunting tales of a celestial anomaly, a rogue planet, a cosmic saboteur whose rare appearance heralds disaster and upheaval. The Sumerians called it Nibiru, the planet of crossing. Egyptians feared it as the destroyer. Biblical texts knew it as the wormwood star. Are these merely the colorful myths of ancient peoples, or are they fragmented memories of an all-too-real cosmic threat? Modern science, once quick to dismiss such legends, is now forced to reconsider. In 2016, astronomers Konstantin Batygin and Mike Brown from Caltech presented mathematical evidence suggesting the existence of a massive planet at the far edge of our solar system, Planet 9. Their calculations describe a world 5 to 10 times the mass of Earth, on a highly elongated orbit that takes between 10,000 and 20,000 years to complete a single revolution around the Sun. Here's where ancient myth and modern astrophysics begin to blur. Sumerian cuneiform tablets, dating as far back as the 4th millennium BCE, contain astonishingly accurate astronomical data. They describe a solar system of 12 celestial bodies, including a mysterious 12th planet, Nibiru. How did ancient people know about Neptune, discovered only in 1846, or Pluto in 1930? Were they simply guessing, or did they remember something we've forgotten? One of the most controversial voices in this debate is researcher Zecharia Sitchin. He spent decades interpreting ancient Mesopotamian texts and proposed a radical theory that Nibiru is a habitable world with a sweeping elliptical orbit, home to an advanced race known as the Anunnaki, beings who once visited Earth. Mainstream academia has rejected Sitchin's translations, but the uncanny parallels between his claims and recent astronomical findings are hard to ignore. Let's focus on what the data tells us. Something is warping the orbits of distant objects in the Kuiper Belt, a vast icy region beyond Neptune. These objects behave as if being shepherded by a massive, unseen force. The dwarf planet Sedna, for example, follows a wildly unusual orbit that can't be explained by known gravitational influences. And then there's the Kuiper Cliff, an abrupt drop-off in the number of objects beyond 50 astronomical units. What's causing it? Something or someone. These anomalies have left astronomers scratching their heads and have fueled growing speculation that a massive, unseen planet is hiding in the dark outskirts of our solar system. Ancient texts from multiple civilizations describe apocalyptic upheavals linked to a celestial intruder. The Egyptian Ipuwer papyrus eerily recounts plagues and chaos. The river is blood, the earth turned upside down, days are shrouded in darkness. The Babylonian Epic of Era speaks of a time when the stars left their appointed paths. These aren't just poetic metaphors. They're historical shockwaves echoing from a forgotten trauma. So what happens if Nibiru, or Planet 9, makes its next approach? Even without a direct collision, the consequences could be catastrophic. Its gravity might tilt Earth's axis, triggering sudden climate shifts. It could awaken tectonic fault lines and stir dormant volcanoes. Disturbed asteroid belts might send deadly space rocks hurtling toward us. It could disrupt our magnetosphere, disabling electronics and satellites. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of this theory is the cycle. Sumerian texts suggest that Nibiru returns roughly every 3,600 years. If this is true, its last passage might have occurred around 1600 BCE, a time curiously aligned with the collapse of Bronze Age civilizations, a period marked by mass migrations, natural disasters, and inexplicable cultural decline. Was this coincidence or consequence? The clock might be ticking again. Today, the hunt for Planet 9 continues, using the world's most powerful telescopes and cutting-edge simulations. We stand on the edge of either confirming the greatest myth ever told, or revealing that ancient peoples tried, in the only language they had, to warn us. It may not bear the name Nibiru. It may not carry golden tablets or alien emissaries. But if it exists, its return will reshape everything we think we know about history, science, and our place in the cosmos. One thing is certain, our solar system is far from tamed. It harbors secrets in its coldest, darkest corners, riddles older than civilization itself. And perhaps, just perhaps, the old stories were never stories at all. Maybe they were prophecies. Maybe they were the echo of survivors. Maybe the star of change is already on its way.
Have you heard about Planet 9? No, not Pluto. We're talking about something lurking on the outskirts of the solar system. A mysterious planet that exists in our solar system that we haven't yet discovered. We've been looking for it for years, but finally, it seems like scientists found a key to solve this mystery. Planet 9 is a hypothetical planet. Astronomers have been on the hunt for it for quite some time now. But it's so elusive that they've only been able to piece together a few details about its potential characteristics. One thing we do know is that Planet 9 has to be a massive world, possibly up to 10 times the mass of Earth. That's one big planet. It's also thought to be a distant wanderer, hanging out somewhere between Neptune and Pluto. Some scientists think that Planet 9 might actually be a mini Neptune, with a thick, gaseous atmosphere and a rocky core. Others speculate that it could be an icy world with a solid, frozen surface and a thick layer of hydrogen and helium gas. Of course, since we haven't actually found Planet 9 yet, we can't say for sure what it's like. We're not even sure that it even exists. Some say it's just a myth, like the Tooth Fairy or the Easter Bunny, but others are convinced that it's out there somewhere. And at the end of the day, we're not entirely sure if Planet 9 is even a planet. It might be a special kind of black hole or made entirely of dark matter. The search for Planet 9 began in the early 21st century when a group of astronomers realized that something wasn't quite right with the outer reaches of our solar system. They noticed that some distant objects, known as trans-Neptunian objects, were behaving in unexpected ways. Trans-Neptunian objects, or TNOs, are like the cosmic version of those items in the back of your fridge that you forgot about for years. They're small, icy bodies that hang out in the Kuiper Belt, beyond Neptune. So, scientists noticed that these guys started behaving weirdly. At first, they thought it might be a fluke. But as they dug deeper, they began to suspect that there was a ninth planet lurking out there. Why haven't we discovered it yet, you ask? Well, it may be because of Planet 9's weird orbit. All the other 8 planets orbit the Sun in roughly the same plane, which is like a flat disk. However, our hypothetical friend's orbit is different. It might be tilted and move in a different direction compared to the other planets. Its orbit might also be stretched out like an oval, rather than being nearly circular like usual. Because of this, Planet 9 might spend most of its time far from the Sun, like a true introvert. It only comes relatively close to the inner solar system every few thousand years. This would make it super faint and hard to spot, so the only way we may discover it is by studying the gravitational effects it has on our solar system. And this isn't the first time astronomers have gone looking for a new planet. Back in the 19th century, there was a similar hunt for a hypothetical Planet X. But this time, they were armed with much better technology and a much better sense of humor. They began calling their elusive quarry Planet 9, which was much catchier than Planet X. They even came up with a hashtag for the search, Pluto Lives. It was a reference to the fact that Pluto had been kicked from the planet gang and some astronomers were eager to find a new planet to take its place. But the search for Planet 9 has been no easy task. It's like trying to find a lost sock in the laundry basket the size of a football stadium. It's so far away and so faint that even the most powerful telescopes can't see it. Instead, astronomers have had to rely on indirect evidence, like the strange orbits of TNOs, to try to figure out where it might be. Some scientists have even supposed that it might be a wandering rogue planet, which would explain why it's so hard to find. But they haven't given up hope. Till this day, they're scouring the skies using all sorts of high-tech telescopes and fancy algorithms to try and spot this elusive planet. And fear not, dear curious human, because it looks like after so many years of research, we may have finally found the key to solve this mystery. Astronomer Man Ho Chan from Hong Kong has a theory. He believes that Planet 9 could have a bevy of moons. That's right, not only is it a giant planet hiding out in the depths of space, but it's also a bit of a hoarder. Moons are all the rage in the outer solar system. In fact, almost every planet here has at least one moon, except for Mercury and Venus. Earth has just one, which is kind of sad if you think about it. Even non-planetary bodies like Pluto have at least a couple of moons. A bit unfair, isn't it? Anyway, taking this into account, let's go moon picking with Planet 9. The region between the rock-filled Kuiper Belt and the rock-filled Oort cloud, where this planet is predicted to be, should be ripe for the picking. Chan made some calculations and determined that it would be stranger if the elusive planet didn't have any satellites. According to his calculations, an object the mass of Planet 9 should capture at least 20 TNOs as large as almost 90 miles across. It's like our mysterious planet is playing cosmic Pokemon with these guys. So, what if Planet 9 has moons? Would that make any difference? Kinda, yes. They could give us some indirect clues to finally locate this mysterious planet. Now, you might be thinking, how in the cosmos can we possibly spot these teeny tiny moons? It's not like they're going to wave a giant flag or blast some Beyoncé tunes to get our attention. Well, apparently the key lies in something called tidal heating. Tidal heating might sound like a new workout trend, but it's a real scientific phenomenon. It happens when two celestial bodies are close together. You see, tides aren't just about the rise and fall of the ocean, they're also the result of gravity pulling unevenly on a planet or moon. When a planet and a moon are close enough to each other, their gravity pulls on each other, creating a bit of a football shape. And as these celestial bodies move around each other, they shift shape and generate friction inside, which produces heat. Wow, who knew that Planet 9 could have a workout routine? Perhaps we should start calling it Gym Planet instead. Anyway, if Planet 9 has any moons, the gravitational pull from these moons would cause it to change shape constantly, generating heat in the process. And we might be able to detect this mysterious planet through the heat produced by those moons, even though it gives off no other signals. Now, before you get too excited, finding them won't be a walk in the park. They're incredibly small and would be very far away from us. But hey, nothing worth discovering ever came easy, right? Scientists are optimistic that with the right technology, they can spot this telltale sign. It will be easier for us to spot them with fancy instruments like modern telescopes. Talk about cool friends to have, right? Sure, the process of finding it may be difficult and time-consuming, but the potential payoff is huge. Finding this planet could explain a lot of the strange behavior observed in TNOs, the Kuiper Belt, and beyond. As we've already mentioned, they've been acting super weird lately, tilting and aligning in suspicious ways. If this planet doesn't actually exist, we have yet to explain what is the reason for this strange behavior. In any case, the search for Planet 9 is one of the most exciting and intriguing quests in modern astronomy. It's like a cosmic scavenger hunt, and everyone's invited to join in on the fun. So, grab your telescopes and let's go planet hunting. Who knows, maybe we'll find it sooner than we think.
It's a clear night, and you're outside looking at the stars. The Milky Way alone seems overwhelmingly huge. You check on your phone and discover that the galaxy you're in at this exact moment is 100,000 light-years wide. For scale, 1 light-year is already a very long distance. For example, it takes 4.2 light-years to go from Earth to Proxima Centauri, which is the closest star to our planet other than the Sun. So, 100,000 light-years is way more than we normal humans can fathom. And that's just one galaxy. There's a whole lot more out there. Now, looking at this data, it seems pretty unlikely that we're the only life form out there, doesn't it? But how come we've never found anything else so far? Let's get one thing out of the way. Extraterrestrial life doesn't necessarily mean we're talking about little green people. It can also mean microorganisms, bacteria, and plants that can be found on other planets. The truth is, there's a big spectrum of possibilities for life on another planet. And taking into consideration that there are up to 50 billion planets in the Milky Way, it's very unlikely that we're alone in this big wide universe. And what does life on other planets look like? This is what we've spent years trying to figure out. Go ahead, think with me. A planet may be lifeless today, but it could have traces of organic matter or fossils, meaning that some life form was able to thrive there once. And it could also be that there are planets out there containing life with complex biochemistry, meaning they could have fauna just like we have on Earth, although probably not the same. NASA created a special science that is dedicated to studying life forms outside of Earth. It's called astrobiology. Ever since the space agency was created back in 1958, it didn't take long for it to start looking for extraterrestrial life. They quickly built an action plan. First, they needed to understand how life on Earth was formed, and secondly, how it could have formed on other planets. The first time NASA tried to look for life in outer space was in 1976. The Viking lander blasted into space, headed towards Mars. There were high expectations that humanity would find the first proof of extraterrestrial life. Unfortunately, the lander came back with images of a planet that looked barren and bleak, and scientists were extremely disappointed. Scientific conclusions on whether life could be detected over there were confusing. But hey, you need to know what you're looking for to find it, right? The failure of the Viking mission served to heat up debates amongst NASA scientists to define what life actually meant. And it also served to call their attention to a small but very important detail. Spacecrafts departing from Earth usually transport Earthling microorganisms and bacteria unintentionally, as they remain attached to the vehicle. It turned out that these bacteria could contaminate scientists' samples, so they needed to consider this. All of this made Mars expeditions take a back burner on NASA's short-term plans. There appeared a new priority-first question. What are the types and stages of life that space programs can hope to identify? Scientists might have encountered life on other planets, but they weren't able to identify it as life. That is why NASA began to study our own planet better. They studied everything, from ancient life forms that lived billions of years ago to living creatures that roam the planet today. They understood that the search needed to happen inwards as well as outwards. Let's take a look at the development of Earth's life from its inception. Imagine that this development can be represented as a ladder, or stairs, and each developmental stage is a flight of the bigger staircase. First, we would see basic chemistry, a soup of loose chemical elements like the ones we see in the periodic table. But they need to assemble themselves into more complex structures to be able to self-replicate, change, and evolve. This would happen in the second step, where we start to see the formation of microscopic organisms. In the third step, these cells combine to become multicellular beings, allowing for more complexity and variety. The step above sees species that can evolve big brains, enabling the use of tools, culture, and shared knowledge. That's where humanity is located. Looking at this ladder, one might ask, so what does it take for a multicellular organism to evolve into fully formed humans? This is what is called the Great Filter. It's a huge evolutionary jump that takes a lot of effort and the perfect environmental conditions for it to happen. And given that we haven't heard of any other extraterrestrial civilizations out there, it might be that we're the only ones that were able to make this jump. After all, how likely is it that we'll find life outside of Earth that is similar to us? That depends on how many planets there are out there in their star's Goldilocks zone, the area around a star where water can be liquid. And because stars come in all sizes and configurations, this zone is different for every star system. But that's not the only criteria we know for the existence of life. We usually look for three things to detect life: liquid water, methane, and oxygen. Water is what allows for chemical components to mingle and connect, forming multicellular beings. Methane is produced by the decomposition process made by bacteria, and oxygen is the byproduct of plant respiration. These are some of the telltale signs that the James Webb Telescope was programmed to search for. The James Webb Telescope has ambitious purposes that might revolutionize space science. Its top priorities are to detect forms of life by studying small galaxies orbiting the Milky Way. It will also look for the oldest stars in the universe, trying to gather data on the origin of the universe itself. That's huge! NASA is betting on two variables with this new telescope: a thorough scan on the so-called exoplanets, aka planets from outside our solar system, and the search for extremophiles, a type of life that loves extreme environments. Extremophiles were first discovered on planet Earth back in the 1960s at the bottom of the sea near the Galapagos Islands. Scientists found microorganisms living next to hydrothermal vents that dot the sea floor over that part of the world. Thriving in places like these with extreme temperatures over 700 degrees Fahrenheit takes a lot of resistance. I mean, can you imagine the heat? This discovery was a turning point for the field of astrobiology, as scientists understood that life could survive in extremely harsh conditions, similar to the atmosphere available in several exoplanets. But hey, life might turn up in our own neighborhood if we're lucky enough. Guided by the mantra, "Follow the water," NASA is launching two important missions inside our solar system that can contribute largely to the search for extraterrestrial life. You remember Jupiter, right? It's the gas giant that has a moon known as Europa. A few years ago, scientists discovered that Europa had an ocean hidden behind layers of icy crust. And there's even more. According to research, the water over in Europa is salty, much like the water we have on our planet. Europa is a big contender for the detection of life. But the Europa Clipper mission is not aimed at trying to identify this. Rather, it will orbit the moon and gather as much information about its atmospheric conditions as it can. The other moon-bound mission is the Dragonfly, an octocopter that will explore Saturn's moon Titan. The launch is programmed for 2027 and will only arrive in Titan's orbit around 2034. It will sample and examine a series of promising sites around Saturn's icy moon. And who knows, find some new information on ET life? Let's see what happens. But I'd say we've never been closer to a huge discovery than we are now. Something is happening on the red planet! Scientists believed that they knew nearly everything about its atmosphere, but a NASA rover has discovered something unexpected. There's more oxygen on Mars than they thought, and it behaves in weird ways. In the spring and summer, oxygen levels go up even more, and no one knows why. Now, you might think that when there's oxygen in an atmosphere, it's mostly because there's life somewhere around, like trees on Earth that produce oxygen through photosynthesis. But on Mars, it's not that simple. Non-living processes can also create oxygen, so we can't surely say that its presence means there's life on Mars. Mars has long been one of the main candidates when it comes to looking for signs of extraterrestrial life. Back in the 90s, scientists announced they had spotted potential proof there could be life on Mars because of microbes they had found in a meteorite that had arrived from the red planet. It looked like they had found fossils of bacteria. They actually stumbled upon tiny crystals of magnetite in the meteorite, which they believed could only have been produced by living organisms. It was such a mind-boggling discovery. People were excited, but many were also skeptical. It didn't prove there really was life on the red planet. Maybe there was life there a long time ago. The meteorite is thought to have originally formed on Mars billions of years ago, and to have landed on Earth thousands of years ago. Skeptics soon started to pick apart the evidence and eventually found some things that didn't make sense. For example, these magnetite crystals. No one could be sure how they formed. Why do they have to be bacteria? Some research has shown they could be the result of shock waves. Recently, the Perseverance rover has collected a couple of new rock samples from the Jezero crater on Mars. The theory says that about 3 billion years ago, before the red planet lost most of its atmosphere and basically just dried out, there was a big lake with a river flowing from it in that area. Whoa, what a great environment for life! Perseverance studied mud samples it had found on the bottom of the evaporated saltwater lake. Scientists were amazed to see a record number of sulfate molecules, something we usually find in mollusk shells on our home planet. Such organisms evolved a couple of 100 million years ago, but maybe there was a time when some of their space ancestors lived in water bodies on Mars. Mars has weaker gravity than Earth, which means these weird species could have got really big there, way bigger than their Earth cousins. Gravity plays a significant role when it comes to limiting the size of organisms. Bigger organisms need more energy to move against gravitational forces, but the creatures that may have lived there long ago are just a mix of hypothesis and our imagination, something that's still really hard to prove. Meet the Curiosity rover, another robot NASA is using to explore Mars. Curiosity has been in charge of measuring the composition of the atmosphere of the red planet for many years now. The rover has discovered that it mostly consists of carbon dioxide and a little bit of nitrogen and argon. The atmosphere of Mars has only 0.1% of oxygen, since, as far as we know at the moment, Mars doesn't have plants that could produce enough oxygen. But Curiosity has also discovered anomalies no one can really explain. It's found out that there are spikes in oxygen levels in the Gale crater during the Martian spring and summer. Every year, oxygen levels go up and down in unpredictable patterns there. What's even more interesting is that the oxygen spike is similar to a seasonal spike in methane, which is a gas we often associate with life on Earth. No wonder scientists are scratching their heads and wondering if there's a connection between the two gases, and if they both come from the same source on the Martian surface. Is there something big that breathes there? Come on, we'll be happy even with some small space worms in the soil. There's a type of salt called perchlorates in the Martian soil. Some scientists believe perchlorates might be responsible for the strange spikes in oxygen levels. But like with most things we know about space, it's just a theory. Also, scientists think that perchlorates breaking down in the Martian soil release oxygen too slowly to cause and explain the sudden increase in oxygen levels. One of the suspects is hydrogen peroxide, which is like water's unstable cousin. Hydrogen peroxide forms when sunlight breaks up carbon dioxide and water vapor in the Martian atmosphere. It can seep into the soil and stick to particles underground, which means it forms some kind of oxygen storage tank. Some data even show there are pockets of subsurface water in the Martian soil that may be hiding enough dissolved oxygen to actually support life. But even if the hydrogen peroxide could stay in the soil for millions of years, it would still only explain a small part of the increase in the level of oxygen. So you can't blame it for the whole thing. We can also take a look at an old experiment from the 1970s, where scientists found that moistening the Martian soil caused it to release a lot of oxygen. However, they did this experiment at a warmer temperature than the planet's average. And again, it doesn't explain how the oxygen spike keeps happening every year. None of the clues we have seems to fit the case. Mars may not have enough of its own oxygen, but it's possible to make this gas there. NASA conducted a small experiment where they tried and managed to produce oxygen on Mars. MOXIE is a device that can make oxygen on Mars. It managed to produce enough oxygen for an astronaut to breathe for 100 minutes. This awesome device worked in pretty tough conditions, at night or during the day, at extreme temperatures, and during the crazy dust storms the red planet is known for. Despite all this, MOXIE still kept up with producing high-purity oxygen. MOXIE is a clever device that can make oxygen on Mars by taking in carbon dioxide from the planet's atmosphere and heating it up to incredibly high temperatures. This allows the device to pull oxygen atoms from the carbon dioxide and produce breathable oxygen gas. If we want to use MOXIE to make enough oxygen for human missions to Mars, we need to make a bigger version of the device. But if we make it bigger, we might have trouble keeping it at the right temperature and making sure it heats up evenly without breaking. The ultimate goal would be to create an oxygen device that could continuously support a human mission for about 400 days. With a bigger version of MOXIE, we'd have enough oxygen to support crew members and even propel a return rocket to our home planet. When you see the dusty red surface of Mars, you can't say it's a place that hides liquid water underneath. Some say it's too cold for water to exist on Mars anyway, but there are stories that there could be a hidden world of liquid water, just like subglacial lakes in Antarctica. And to find out more, we might have to drill down about a mile beneath the surface. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But in the meantime, scientists have been using a spacecraft called Mars Express to study radar reflections around the southern pole of Mars. The reflections seem to indicate there could be liquid water, and the planet's interior might be keeping it warm. But some claim it might just be rock. We hope there are underground lakes on Mars because it would be a perfect spot to look for life. After all, scientists have found bacteria living in subglacial lakes on Earth, but we don't know for sure how deep they are, or if they're just small veins of water in the ice. Only time and more exploration will tell.
It's dark and incredibly cold. There's no oxygen. There's no water. There's no life. But the James Webb Space Telescope doesn't seem bothered by all this. Its main goal is to find the very first galaxies that formed billions of years ago in the early universe and observe the stars making up distant planetary systems. Its mission is to... But wait, what is that? The James Webb Space Telescope has discovered something absolutely amazing. A star-planet hybrid with very strange clouds. This bizarre world called VHS 1256b is actually a brown dwarf. Those are bigger than planets, but too small to classify as stars. They emit some light of their own and are quite hot, but their mass is simply not enough to fuse hydrogen into helium, like full-fledged stars do. Space bodies of this kind aren't actually brown. They occur in a wide variety of colors, but those are mostly invisible to the human eye. What we can see is the light they emit, and to us it appears to be dark orange or magenta. The brown dwarf we're talking about is almost 20 times the size of Jupiter. It orbits 2 red dwarf stars. And to complete one orbit, the brown dwarf needs 17,000 years. In fact, astronomers found out about this unusual exoplanet in 2016. But at that time, they didn't classify it as a brown dwarf, and thus couldn't explain its puzzling reddish glow. Now, thanks to the James Webb Telescope, they know the space object's origin. Anyway, back to those clouds. As you know, clouds on Earth are made of water vapor, but those on the brown dwarf are different. They seem to be made of sand. It looks like good old sand from Earth, but it's actually not. The clouds are made of tiny particles of silicate. Scientists have been putting forward theories about the existence of such sand clouds on exoplanets for quite some time. But the discovery the James Webb Space Telescope made is the first real proof. The silicate particles on the sandy dwarf are most likely quartz or some other mineral. In size, they're less than a micron, and 1 micron is 1/25th of a thousandth of an inch. In other words, they look like particles in smog. The exoplanet seems to have an atmosphere which contains some water, methane, and other substances and minerals. Interestingly, this atmosphere isn't still. It's constantly undergoing extreme changes. Another cool thing about it, scientists have detected carbon dioxide. And this is only the second confirmed discovery of this gas on a planet outside the solar system. By the way, the James Webb Space Telescope, with the help of which astronomers discovered our sandy brown dwarf, is an absolutely stunning piece of equipment, around 100 times more powerful than Hubble. Even though the telescope itself is 3 stories high and its size equals that of a tennis court, its mirrors are the lightest large telescope mirrors of all time. When all the 18 mirrors of the telescope were completed during the manufacturing process, their mass was reduced by 92% in comparison to the initial discs. Each mirror weighed a mere 44 pounds. The telescope's mirrors seem to be gold, but in reality, they're made of beryllium, steel gray, lightweight, and brittle metal. There is indeed a gold coating on each mirror, but they can't be produced entirely out of gold, since this material tends to expand and contract even with small temperature changes. That's why the total amount of gold in the James Webb Space Telescope is less than 2 ounces. James Webb's telescope side is cooling itself down, and its temperature doesn't rise higher than -370 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cool enough to make liquid nitrogen. A truly enormous 5-layered sun shield stretches around the telescope and reflects away as much sunlight as possible, letting the telescope stay cool. The telescope was launched near the equator because Earth spins a bit faster there, and this gave the rocket some extra push. The telescope orbits the Sun more than 1 million miles away from Earth, and when it runs out of fuel, it'll keep orbiting the Sun indefinitely. On the other hand, even though the telescope wasn't actually designed to be serviced or upgraded, it might potentially be refueled with the help of robots. This would extend its life. Anyway, if you think that our newly founded brown dwarf is the only bizarre exoplanet out there, let me show you some other breathtaking worlds. There is an exoplanet that is really something else. Just look at its awesome magenta color. You can find it in the Virgo constellation. The planet is called Gliese 504b. It orbits very far from its parent star, 9 times the distance between the Sun and Jupiter. The planet formed relatively recently and is still glowing with heat. That's why its surface looks pinkish. One of the oldest exoplanets we know about is about 12.7 billion years old. It's almost 3 times as old as Earth. This also means that the so-called Genesis planet formed only about 1 billion years after the Big Bang. The planet is so old that its 2 parent stars have had enough time to evolve into a white star and a pulsar, making almost 100 revolutions per second. I bet sunrises on this planet must look awesome. Just 20 light years away from the Sun, which isn't such a great distance when we talk about space, a bizarre rogue planet is roaming the Milky Way galaxy. But even though this planet doesn't orbit any star, it still has an incredibly powerful magnetic field. It's 4 million times stronger than Earth's. The exoplanet also produces amazing auroras. That's why when it was discovered in 2016, astronomers were almost sure they had detected a brown dwarf. But later, scientists got some proof that this space object wasn't big enough to be a brown dwarf. The planet sure is a mammoth among its peers. It's 1.2 times as wide as the largest planet in the solar system, Jupiter, and more than 12 times as heavy. Astronomers think the exceptionally strong magnetic field helps the planet produce auroras. But the most curious thing is that they're generated in a different way than auroras on Earth. It might be because the exoplanet's moon helps the planet create mesmerizing light shows. The next exoplanet isn't like any other. It's often called Super Saturn or Saturn on steroids. That's because J1407b has a colossal system of rings. They're 640 times as large as those our Saturn has. This bizarre world is the only planet we know about that has rings similar to Saturn's. If you moved this giant to our solar system and used it to replace Saturn, its rings would look many times larger than a full moon. An exoplanet called WASP-12b munches on the light coming from its star. It's one of the darkest worlds people know about. All because its day side consumes light rather than reflects it back into space. The egg-shaped planet is giant, twice the size of Jupiter, and it traps more than 94% of the light that reaches its atmosphere. It might be the main reason for the temperatures on the surface of the planet that can rise up to 4,600 degrees Fahrenheit. The night side of the planet isn't as hot as its day side, a mere 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. The difference in temperature makes water vapor and clouds gather above the surface of the planet. And from time to time, swirls of material from the planet's superheated atmosphere spills onto its star. What a view! Discovered in 2017, KELT 9b is one of the hottest exoplanets we know of. The temperatures there can reach 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit. For comparison, the temperatures at the surface of the Sun reach 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The planet is probably so insanely hot because it orbits extremely close to its star, KELT 9, which is way hotter and bigger than our Sun. Experts believe that the giant star might one day evaporate the entire planet.
It's been more than a year since the James Webb Telescope, which had taken over 20 years to complete, was launched. And for such a relatively short time, the ultra-modern and most powerful in history piece of equipment has already made plenty of discoveries. By observing the universe at infrared wavelength, James Webb lets us see things no other telescope has ever shown before. The primary goal of this incredible piece of equipment is to study the formation of galaxies and stars that appeared in the early universe. For example, look at the closest to us stellar nursery, a region of space where new stars get born. NASA has shared an image from James Webb that shows a small star-forming region. If you look at the picture attentively, you'll see jets bursting from infant stars. Around them, different colored clouds of cosmic dust are colliding with one another. The view is mesmerizing. The red dust consists of molecular hydrogen. You can also notice that some stars have something like shadows. Those hint at the creation of what will later become planets. At first sight, the image may seem chaotic, but astronomers claim that it's a relatively small and quiet stellar nursery in comparison to some others. Many young stars there are similar in size to our Sun, or a bit smaller. The photo itself was taken with the help of Webb's near-infrared camera, NIRCam. It's the observatory's primary camera that snaps images of the cosmos in two different infrared ranges. Another amazing discovery the Webb telescope has made is smoke molecules in a distant galaxy. It's the first time such molecules have been discovered so far away from our planet. The galaxy in question lies 12.3 billion light-years away from Earth. It most likely formed about 1.5 billion years after the Big Bang. Despite such a huge distance between the galaxy and our planet, scientists have managed to detect chemical compounds found in soot or smoke, and it's quite a big deal since it has pushed the record for detecting similar complex molecules back by around 1 billion years. This study has also confirmed the sheer power of the coolest piece of space equipment of all time. It managed to make this discovery despite the fact that the spectrometer needed for the measurements didn't perform to the fullest after having experienced a sudden and surprising degradation. The James Webb Telescope has also helped to boost our understanding of exoplanets. Those are planets orbiting stars other than our own Sun. At the beginning of 2023, the observatory spotted its first exoplanet, LHS 475b. It's located 41 light-years away from Earth and is approximately the same size as our planet. According to NASA, nowadays, James Webb is the only operating telescope capable of categorizing the atmosphere of Earth-sized exoplanets. The research team behind the discovery believes such results underline the precision of the telescope. They hope that it will help us locate many more rocky exoplanets that we might be able to colonize in the future. Even though, at first sight, it may seem that the universe is pretty empty, it's actually a very busy place. And Webb has all the necessary instruments to see all kinds of cosmic events happening out there. Just look at this image of WR-124. It's a star on the cusp of its explosive demise. In the image, the star is about to go supernova. It happens when a star runs out of its fuel and explodes at the end of its life cycle, releasing a giant cloud of space dust and hot gas into space. The star captured by the Webb telescope was at the Wolf-Rayet stage of its life. That's a period when a star is shedding its outer layers before going supernova. The next amazing thing discovered by James Webb is a star-planet hybrid with very strange clouds. This bizarre world, VHS 1256b, is actually a brown dwarf. Those are bigger than planets but too small to classify as stars. They emit some light of their own and are quite hot, but their mass is simply not enough to fuse hydrogen into helium like full-fledged stars do. Space bodies of this kind aren't actually brown. They occur in a wide variety of colors, but those are mostly invisible to the human eye. What we can see is the light they emit, and to us, it appears to be dark orange or magenta. The brown dwarf discovered by the Webb telescope is almost 20 times the size of Jupiter. It orbits 2 red dwarf stars, and to complete one orbit, it needs over 10,000 years. Astronomers first found out about this unusual exoplanet in 2016, but at that time, they didn't classify it as a brown dwarf, and, thus, couldn't explain its puzzling reddish glow. Now, thanks to the James Webb telescope, they know the space object's origin. Anyway, back to those clouds. As you know, clouds on Earth are made of water vapor, but those on the brown dwarf are different. They seem to be made of sand. It looks like good old sand from Earth, but it's actually not. The clouds are made of tiny particles of silicate. Another recent discovery involves several large galaxies that scientists believe were born not long after the Big Bang. They aren't supposed to be there, and no one expected to find them. But the James Webb Space Telescope has spotted them. These galaxies, as massive as our home Milky Way, are full of mature red stars. Astronomers have analyzed the light coming from them and estimated their age 500 to 700 million years after the Big Bang. It means that they came into being when our universe was very young, almost a baby. But the most bizarre thing about these galaxies is their tremendous size and the age of the stars dwelling there. The data received by the telescope don't coincide with the existing ideas about what the universe looked like and how it evolved in its early years. It also doesn't match the earlier observations made by Hubble. And here, James Webb has captured a distant region of space in unprecedented detail. This section of space is known as Pandora's cluster. In the image, you can see 3 massive clusters of galaxies coming together and forming a megacluster. The combined mass of these clusters acts as a powerful gravitational lens. And thanks to this natural magnification effect, scientists can see other galaxies in the region. Astronomers claim that the most recent image of Pandora's cluster is stronger and deeper than they have ever seen. James Webb has also managed to spot thousands of young stars never seen before in the Tarantula Nebula. This space formation got its nickname because of the appearance of dusty filaments spotted in previous images. It's the biggest star-forming region in the local group, which includes the galaxies nearest to the Milky Way. The Webb telescope's images have helped to shed light on the composition of the Tarantula Nebula. The telescope has also detected protostars, infant stars in the process of gaining mass. Astronomers expect that these protostars will eventually form and shape the nebula further. Among other discoveries made by the James Webb telescope, you can see the birth of 50 distant stars. Some of them power protoplanetary disks, which might later form solar systems light years away from our own. Here's one more image from James Webb. You can see a supermassive black hole that has a mass of 9 billion suns. It's so ginormous and ancient that scientists are struggling to explain its existence. Astronomers have also discovered a distant ring of dust, rock, and gas that contains a chemical called methylcation. It's known as a molecular building block of life, and it makes most of the organic material on our planet. James Webb helped researchers see powerful sandstorms on a planet 235 trillion miles away. Astronomers were happy to discover this treasure chest of countless tiny sand particles. Now look at this. Do you recognize this image? Those are the so-called pillars of creation. But this new view shows us just how star-speckled that dusty region actually is. You can compare the new photo with the one taken by Hubble in 2014. This is astonishing proof of scientific progress.
Hey there, Earthling! If you think you're special because you live on the only habitable planet out there, think again. What makes a planet suitable for life? A whole bunch of factors, like the planet itself, its neighbors, and the star it orbits. A habitable planet is basically one that can sustain life, with things like access to water, energy sources, and nutrients. Earth, for example, is in the sweet spot, known as the habitable zone, where it can have liquid water on its surface. But just being in this zone doesn't automatically mean a planet is habitable. Factors like crazy levels of radiation can make a planet uninhabitable, even if it has the right temperature. So the bottom line is, we need water, something to orbit, and a set of nutrients of chemical origin that can be found in Mendeleev's periodic table of the elements or those funky snacks you buy. Look at this exoplanet called K2-18b. The term exoplanet doesn't mean that it's exotic. It just states that this planet is located outside the solar system. Most planets need to orbit something, unless we're talking about rogue planets that are basically planet-sized things floating around in space but not orbiting around any star or brown dwarf. Instead of our Sun, K2-18b orbits a red dwarf called K2-18. It's not your average star you can see with the unaided eye in the night sky. This one is hard to observe because of its low luminosity. K2-18b is indeed a planet far, far away. It's located 38 parsecs away from Earth. 1 parsec is somewhere around 19 trillion miles. Hey, you do the math. Hint, lots of zeros. K2-18b is a sub-Neptune, meaning that it has a smaller radius than Neptune. However, it's much bigger than our humble abode. It's about 2.6 times the radius of Earth. As for the weight, K2-18b is way chunkier than Earth. It's about 8 times as massive. It takes 33 days for this planet to go around its star, and it gets just about as much starlight as Earth gets from the Sun. This planet has a light intensity of 1.28 times greater than Earth and has an equilibrium temperature of 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Nope, it doesn't mean that K2-18b feels like New York in January. It only gives us an idea of the theoretical temperature put there. The planetary equilibrium temperature is basically the temperature a planet would have if it was perfectly balanced in terms of radiation. It's when the amount of heat leaving a planet is the same as the amount of heat coming in. Now, the trillions of miles that set us apart aren't a problem for potent telescopes, such as the Kepler Space Telescope that discovered this planet and the James Webb Space Telescope that is studying its atmosphere now. In 2019, scientists announced that they had found water vapor in the atmosphere of exoplanet K2-18b, which sparked widespread interest toward this outlandish world. 4 years later, the Webb telescope detected carbon dioxide and methane swirling in the air of this guy. Carbon dioxide is basically our best friend here on Earth. Humans need it to breathe properly and keep our blood pH in check. And plants love this stuff too, because it helps them make oxygen through photosynthesis. Obviously, we can't survive without it. Without methane either. However, this little gem got some scientists buzzing with excitement even more due to the discovery of some funky dimethyl sulfide gas molecules in its atmosphere. In 2023, scientists from the University of Cambridge spotted carbon-based molecules like methane and carbon dioxide hanging out on K2-18b with the help of JWST. This could mean that this exoplanet might feature a hydrogen-rich atmosphere and a watery surface. There's a potential whiff of dimethyl sulfide, or simply DMS, in the mix. On Earth, this stuff is usually linked to life, since it's normally produced by photoplankton in the oceans. The fact that we're picking up hints of DMS on K2-18b is like finding a golden ticket in the cosmic chocolate bar. Hey, kinda gives you the willies now, doesn't it? Why is DMS so important, you ask? Well, it's a bit of a superhero on our planet, playing a crucial role in the sulfur cycle and even affecting our climate by helping clouds form. And spotting DMS on other planets could be a sign of life similar to ours. Looks like this planet is a nice spot, with its not that rough temperature and all the right nutrients to keep us alive. So, what's your take on its overall look? It probably took the planet a good few million years to come together. While things might heat up deep down underground, it shouldn't make a big difference on the surface. Some experts believe it could be home to a water or molten lava ocean, with a hydrogen-rich atmosphere resembling a gas giant like Uranus or Neptune. Now this one doesn't really match our Earth standards, since our atmosphere is mostly made of nitrogen. If there's an ocean, it's likely under a thick layer of ice and rock, which could mess with the planet's climate. Once things get really hot, the line between the ocean and the sky blurs. We're not totally sure if there's a liquid ocean on K2-18b, and it's tricky to see one from afar. Just looking at the planet's size and weight won't give us the answer. The whole liquid water-ocean thing is up in the air. Initially, we thought water in a supercritical state was most likely, but new observations point toward a liquid ocean. Suspicious gases like hydrocarbons and ammonia might be moving from the air into the water if there's an ocean, which could mean no clear line between the sky and the sea. But some experts say a molten rock ocean could be doing the same trick. Others think a gas-rich mini-Neptune setup could explain things too. The Hubble Space Telescope did some snooping and found that K2-18b is rocking an atmosphere filled with hydrogen. They think there might be some water vapor hanging out there too, but it's a bit of a mystery. Apparently, the James Webb Space Telescope got a peek and saw less than 0.1% water vapor, possibly because the planet has a dry stratosphere vibe going on. As for ammonia, it's nearly non-existent in that distant world. Methane and carbon dioxide seem to be dominant in the atmosphere, making up about 1%. But don't expect to see any other carbon oxides crashing the party. Their concentration is just a guess at this point. The atmosphere of K2-18b is just a small fraction of its total mass, around 6.2%, and has probably got a similar vibe to Uranus and Neptune. Haze-wise, there's not much going on, and water clouds are a bit of a mystery. They're probably icy, although there's a chance for some liquid water clouds too. Now, besides water, the atmosphere could also contain some ammonium chloride, sodium sulfide, potassium chloride, and zinc sulfide clouds, depending on what the planet is into. And it seems like things might get a bit turned up high in the atmosphere, with the temperature inversion causing a stratosphere situation, just your average day in outer space. So far, scientists have come up with several climate models this planet might have. For example, some of them think that there's the same temperature across the whole planet, unless the planet is spinning super fast and the temperature difference between the poles and the equator is minor. But these are all speculations at this point. The amount of radiation K2-18b gets from his star is similar to what Earth gets. The temperature on the planet might be anywhere from really cold to pretty warm. Whether it can support life depends on its atmosphere and clouds. Scientists think microorganisms from Earth could survive there, even with all the hydrogen. But it's still hard to tell if there's life on K2-18b because the gases we usually look for might not work in its atmosphere. Scientists think the James Webb Space Telescope might be able to detect different